Happy Monday, everybody.
Bryce, is this what the kids rage to?
I guess so. This is the new Monster Cat song of the day, so.
Monster Cat is on Twitch, right? I always see him we follow him on the Night Attack account.
Yeah. It's a record label,
Oh, nice.
and so I think now they split off into like 2 sub labels, so they put out like 4 new things a week. It's crazy. Brian will be joining us.
It's very rage worthy
This song?
for the kids.
Yeah, for the kids. Kids.
Kind of an old school.
When they, go get their glow sticks and get on their MySpace and, do what those kids do these days.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Brian Rushton.
Ahoy! Sorry for the awkward handoff. Bonnie's not around, so we may have a rogue Callie showing up.
Missing these shows is really unprofessional, and we're gonna have to take that to the committee.
Oh, man. I'm happy to have you back, Andrew, though.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back for a show.
Is it 1 show or 2?
I gotta check a thing about a thing,
Okay.
and if I can do the thing, then I'll be here.
We're still unsure about this one. Like at any moment, he might just evaporate.
Yeah. Any moment, I'll just start answering questions randomly, and you're like, it's a recorded loop. It's not here. Well, it's a good point, guys. But meanwhile,
I ended up watching all of that film Brian sent over last night. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it.
I wanted to, but what can I say? I guess I could say I was doing rebreather training. So I was at the bottom of the ocean yesterday afternoon, then carried tons of gear back and to Los Angeles and got home, and I looked at that. I'm like, I want to see this, but I think I just want to sleep. If I wake up and the robot's taking over, it's my own fault. I'm sorry, I should have watched it.
I don't know. You watched all of that film, Brian, right?
I did. Did
I-
anyone else watch it?
I did not.
I did.
I want to. I mean, I just got home late last night.
So, did you were you able to catch any of it?
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, then we can speak about it in loose terms, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I had some strong opinions on it. But if it's just the 2 of us.
Just the 2 of us.
I don't know why I made that noise. And reading this Cardi B profile.
Oh yeah, GQ did a profile on her, right?
She's a presidential history buff.
Oh.
Do you think she'd be interested in the Final Four of sex scandals?
I really need. I don't know. I've crystallized the fact that now my brand is going to be like a Cardi B pundit. That's who I want.
That's your target demo. That's your
exactly.
target demo.
That's my lane. I've now had it defined for me.
That's great.
I mean, there are worse ones.
Yeah, true.
Sure. Okay, I think I am good to go over here.
So Justin's got a hard out at 1. So in that case, Brian, do you want to do after things ish? Are you good on time? Or
Yeah. No, I'm good. In fact, I got ahead of my homework for Cord Killers this morning, so I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, if Justin needs to miss a show, it's fine. It's really, not professional.
So it was a good bit.
Yeah.
I have to figure out.
all right.
Things. You guys good to go? Everybody
Yep.
good?
I'm ready.
Okay. Then take it away, Andrew, in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood.
What? He lives! Resurrected is he! Android, that is definitely human.
I have stories where that could be closer to reality than we realize.
Oh, jeez.
And Justin Robert Young.
Hey, it's me. I'm back.
And our producer extraordinaire, Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
I assume also androids. You're all androids. Replicants,
Oh,
I tell
something.
you.
No, I am not.
Your mom's a replicant.
Alex Albrecht.
So, one of the things that I'd say the four of us have sort of learned is that when you're involved in projects that sometimes you're involved in a project, if you don't know if it's going to make it, and then you find out, okay, it's going to happen, but then your people you're involved with, like, you can't say anything, can't tell anything about it, and then you're like, okay, I'm just going to disappear mysteriously for weeks on a time and hope nobody on social media or anything else notices. I'm on one of those projects where I can't say anything about it right now.
Well, I don't know what your situation is, but I know that I went, quote unquote, on vacation for a while and posted a bunch of photos without any context whatever, saying I'm on vacation. And what's funny is how many people just thought I was goofing around for a
On
year.
vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I can even say as far as, and it's not like, aha, so this is the thing or whatever, but it'll be a fun, interesting story. But I tell everybody listening who cares, who was like, where was Andrew? It's going to be worth it. It is going to be worth it.
It will.
It's going to be, it's not book related at all. And it's going to be like, you're going to like, oh, that sounds like an Andrew thing. So,
Yeah. Just in general, the less you can talk about it, the more awesome it usually is. So Andrew can't talk about anything.
yeah, I can't. I've been asking, when can I say I'm doing even part of this? Oh, we'll get back to oh, okay. All right. So anyhow, no, don't trust Andrew Main is not coming back. No. This is new
But
phase.
either as a show or as a meme.
This is awesome what I'm doing, but there's moments there where I'm like, I wish I was doing that instead. So anyhow,
I don't think this is saying anything, but I know I have had moments where I find myself in a position I'm like, past Brian just really wasn't thinking about future present Brian having to actually go through this, was he?
Oh yeah, it's exactly that, Brian. It was one of these things where the joke was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if blank, 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 thinking like nobody will say yes to this, and then you don't really have a plan for if they say yes to it, and then they say yes, and you're like, I thought it was cooler if I just said I wanted to do it, but they said no, it's too crazy, and then they're like, no, that sounds great. Yeah, you can make it happen, make it happen. I'm like, yeah, sure, all right, sounds good, okay. Shut up, Andrew.
Well,
so anyhow,
we all look forward to finding out. I can't wait for for whatever the moment is.
Yes. Anyhow, let's carry on to things we can talk about, gentlemen. A very exciting development, and just in the last, I think, 24 hours, Mr. Elon Musk. Elon Musk, the guy. We never see him in the news anymore. I know he's just become just this, recluse. We never know what he's up to. Put out on Instagram and Twitter a photograph of the tooling, or I forget the particular word that they use for it, but it's actually how they make the carbon fiber fuselage.
Jesus.
This is the BFR. Remember when we were at SpaceX and we saw the thing they used to make the cylinders for the Falcon 9, right? They take carbon fiber, gets spun up onto this thing, then it gets heated up, and then all of a sudden the carbon fiber gets cured. This is what we're looking at. This is for making the fuselage for the big Falcon rocket.
So this is it's highly reflective. It looks like it's made of aluminum or steel. Of course, it's probably made of neither. This is all carbon fiber?
No. The carbon fiber gets applied to the surface of this.
Got it. So it gets wrapped around it to reinforce everything.
Well, it's wrapped. This is actually a mold. Think of it as a mold. So the carbon fiber gets wrapped around it, right? And they make a shell out of it. Heat, the carbon fiber solidifies, and they slide the carbon fiber out of this thing.
Oh, wow.
and then he uses to make more and more and more. Now, if you're wondering where this would be on a BFR rocket, I happen to have an example here. Oh, we might have to go to widescreen for everybody to see this, guys.
Oh, it's so your rocket is so
figured
big.
it's important that we're able to do our own detailed models of this thing. So you've got your engines there. So imagine this fuselage is part of this section here, right? So to give you an idea of how big it is, you're looking at like 1, 2 of these sections plus this end section there. Versus if we had to have the booster, be that this big. So that would be.
It's much larger and longer than the.
Yeah, I need to get a wider lens, guys. I'm sorry about this.
Just describing.
Excuse the crudity of the model. It's neither to scale. So anyhow, that's what we're looking at here. Is just this much area, basically.
Yeah, and they the photo has a Tesla for scale, which I guess is Tesla is the new banana in that you gotta have one to understand exactly the size of what you're looking at.
And what's exciting about this is that one, there's a concept called a paper rocket, which is like, oh, this is a great idea. We have a proposal. We figured out all the math. We have this thing, but it only exists on paper. This is a multi-million-dollar expenditure, and we talked about, I think, previously how SpaceX is now purchased the land and is actually leasing the land and using land in the Port of Los Angeles for the BFR factory. There's some question like, oh, was this made in Seattle with one of the subcontractors or contractors rather, or was this made here? Seems like this was probably, maybe the tent was erected in Los Angeles and this is at where, or this is whatever's going to be made here will be used there. And so this is the first early stages of building the thing. I mean, this is acquiring the equipment and starting to build the fuselages and whatnot. And a rocket itself, the goal is to make it an uncomplicated thing. It's carbon fiber tanks to hold the fuel, some engines, and of course you have life support and a lot of other things. But the major structural things, this is it. This is the largest structural part of it, and you can already see that they already have the tools to start building this thing.
How do you even move that thing? Is that too big to be transported on the interstate highway, or?
They put it on the back of that Model 3 Tesla.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah. That seems legit.
Yeah, and Brian, that's the key. That's the trick of it all. And so that's why, for this, it's why they're building the factory on the port. So what you do is you use a crane. So a crane lifts this thing onto a barge. Generally, you barge this in, or it could be built in
of course.
place.
Yeah, no, travel by sea. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's why, ports often have a lot of other industry because there's certain kinds of equipment you can kind of only do there, or you just build it in place and you transport it there. So I don't know specifically how this one was, assembled or whatever, but, I mean, it's kind of awesome.
So what's the latest estimate on the BFR? I'm sure it was announced to be, next week, but best guess, when do we think it's really going to go up?
The goal is, and from the looks of this, it looks like, and I'll tell you the funny thing too, is you think about how the sentiment and criticism has switched. They're still hoping to be able to do suborbital hops into this year.
End of this year? Like as a test or as a successful re-landing the BFR and the whole thing?
Suborbital hop, yeah, taking the upper stage, this part, and then having it take off like they did the Grasshopper tests, come back down and land again. That's what they want to do. Not go orbital, but do suborbital hops and keep expanding, bringing it back down and testing things. They want to try for this year. Okay, so everybody knows Musk timelines, but I will say they've gotten better. We've gotten from 5-year delays to 3 years delays to 1 year delays on stuff. And because there has been this accumulated knowledge with him and his engineers as far as what is a realistic timeline. So that's a thing that often doesn't get brought up is, he said this. Yeah, he said this thing 12 years ago when the rocket company was new. And now their estimates tend to be better.
Well, but even if, he could be late forever as far as I'm concerned. So he gets dinged on timelines. If that's the worst, then, and he eventually delivers, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Really, that's the thing. It's just, if he has the goods, that's all that matters.
We're looking at the giant piece of multi-million-dollar tooling equipment to build a rocket for going to Mars. This is what we're looking at. This is a real deal. It's like no other space program or company can actually show us, hey, what are you going to use to build the actual rocket that's going to go to and land on Mars? I will get back to you on that. You know, there's ideas and stuff like this, and you know, NASA's an amazing organization. What they've been able to accomplish, you know, when we sit back and we look at history and you know, from on a grander scale, and we look at all of the ideas that came from there, all the research that came from there, it's incredible. And when we go to Mars, you know, we're going to be able to survive and live, hopefully, based in large part upon all the sort of research and stuff they've been doing so far for decades and stuff on doing this. That being said, is that, you know, even though you've got some of the greatest scientists in the world there and they've done amazing research, organizationally trying to get it all together and do something like a big ambitious project is hard, particularly when you have to deal with Congress, you have to deal with pork barrel politics, and you have to deal with inertia and the fact that you have different factions that want to do something else or another. You know, we won't see, we won't see actual physical, this is the thing that's going to take humans to the surface of Mars for a long time, you know?
So in the chat, Peds25 says investors aren't okay with those kind of timelines though, right? They want realistic and measurable timelines. Worth noting, you could apply all that to Tesla, but SpaceX is a private company, right?
Yeah, so SpaceX is privately held. There are several different, organizations that put money into it. I have a friend that was actually one of the early stage investors. And then you also have like Founders Fund, which is Peter Thiel's company, right? The bigger investors that I'm aware of are very happy with it. Google, they're looking at a longer term thing there, but they see it as a longer term plan. And by all accounts, they seem very, very okay with this. And Elon Musk has been buying back shares of SpaceX. So they have employees have equity in it, and then there's programs started to buy back into that. So I think investors are probably pretty happy, and considering you have this plus SpaceX just got approval from the FCC to start building Starlink, which is going to be their internet coverage from low Earth orbit.
They also, I think it's worth noting that SpaceX also has the advantage of being so far out in first place that it's like, who's going to argue about your 200 meter or 100 meter lead when you're just, everyone else is so far behind,
yeah,
you know?
I would suspect that it would take SpaceX like selling thing or getting government contracts that they couldn't fulfill, or they were behind on stuff like that for there to really be any kind of investor blowback. Like them having their own R&D being on their own schedule, it seems to be something that Elon Musk would have leeway on.
Well, yeah, and what they did, the big critical change happened last year was when he unveiled the plans over a year ago for the ITS, which was the much bigger rocket, says this is what we want to build. I think he was hoping for governments or whatever want to contribute and say we want to help out. What can we pay for? Can we contract that? And they realized that was it would take a long time to do that. Not there wasn't interest, but it was just you're dealing with the inertia that you have to deal with. So they came up with this version, the scaled down BFR. Because they could then if you go to SpaceX.com and they have a manifest, you can see all the launches they have booked so far. And that doesn't include ones that, still have to be scheduled or whatever. So the goal with this is that this will be used, they'll use this for launching many of those satellites in the future. They actually have some BFR missions on there. And so the idea is this fits right into the business model is we're going to use the Falcon 9 for the foreseeable next several years. At the end of this month, by the way, they're going to test Falcon, not Block 5 or version 7. It gets confusing. That is going to be the one that Elon plans that they could relaunch in 24 hours, right? So they have the Falcon 9 booster that can do that. And the goal is they'll still build some of these boosters, but they want to ship the Falcon 9 into BFR, so this fits the business model. So if you're an investor, you're like, okay, I get the Mars thing. That sounds really, really cool. But, why are we spending $1 billion or so? How many billions of dollars on, doing this? And the answer is, well, we get this rocket that can go to Mars. We also reduce the cost of going to orbit to under $7 million.
The answer, my friends, are government contracts. That's why we're investing in it, because it's going to be free money.
Yep. So that's what's exciting about it is that. Yeah, that's the Air Force seems very enthusiastic about this because the Air Force they want to have other launch partners, other readiness. There was a frustration there with ULA, and now that you have this capability, when this thing goes up, taking a look at this replica that I made specifically for the show, when this thing is in orbit, it has almost the same interior volume as the International Space Station.
That's amazing. That's
So
amazing.
you-
We could just launch up an ISS and either leave it there or take it back down.
Yeah.
We could,
You could
just bring it down, land it, tool it, send it back on up.
You could load it up with a bunch of experiments and stuff. You also have this space here, which is your unpressurized cargo. This has got as much interior space as almost the International Space Station. This is the unpressurized space, so you've got all that room for cargo and stuff like that too.
That could be food and I guess anything vacuum packed and stored safely in there. That's all of your supplies.
Yeah, and if we want, I mean, we could talk to do you guys want to talk a little bit what the current plan is for the Mars mission?
Yeah, well, I know it's ever shifting, and I sort of, to be honest, this is a benefit and an unfortunate side effect of being on the Weird Things podcast. Is the benefit is, of course, I'm always up to date on the latest SpaceX news. The downside is when there's a press release, I think, well, I'll find out about it on Monday.
Yeah. So the current plan is that they want to send in 2002, and again, 2002. No, it was a secret mission. Elon didn't tell anybody.
Time travel.
In 2022, and again, it's a hopeful, optimistic timeline. It is not we're going to do this. 2022, you have the closest point at which Mars and Earth come closest way. That's the optimum time in which you want to launch together, because other times Mars can be opposite side of the source from Earth. So 2022 is the closest time. It's like every 26 months there's this point at which it gets closest. So 2022, the plan is to send two of these, and you saw the mold. It's like, why build one and you can make two? They want to send two of these unmanned to Mars, right? Use the booster. And you could actually have, and to do that, you can have, all you need is two upper stages, and you can have one booster, because the booster goes up,
comes back down, and then gets reused.
Yeah, and then you have your refueling system, so then it goes in and it refuels it, right? So you can have there'll be a refueling booster too, right?
So I guess 2 will make the journey, 3 will go up though. The third one being there just to refuel the first 2.
Yeah, well, the refueling booster, which will look just like the refueling ship, rather. There's the booster and then the refueling ship, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to be this filled with fuel.
Yeah.
Right? Probably even just that much area filled with fuel, or even just the tanks there filled with fuel and go up and fill it up. They'll mate end to end and then move forward, and the fuel will go from here to there. And so they'll use it to inertia. So it's got to top this thing off to go to Mars. You're going to have like 4 or 5 of these go up, 4 or 5 refuels before you're fully topped off.
Right.
Yeah, that's the ITS. That's the older image of how it was going to do. That's not how it's going to do it now. ITS was going to be much bigger than this. So this one, imagine this, and then reversed. Imagine a full scale version of this. Basically it's just going to go like, literally move it. And
I believe it's called BTB refueling for butt to butt. They just
A to A.
butt
Yes.
to butt.
So they refuel this. They top both of them off. They're going to top 2 of them off. They're in orbit. Then once they're ready, they're going to go to Mars, right?
Yep.
To get to Mars, it's going to be like 180 days. I forget the time they're looking at for whatever velocity. So I think they're looking for like a 90-day transit, like a 3-month transit, right? So unmanned, they get to Mars. Now, the way that they're making this thing go really fast, and the way they're sort of the strategy here is, instead of having fuel to slow down when you get to Mars, like spending a huge amount of fuel to slow down, what this thing is going to do, it's going to take all that energy and it's going to go into the Mars atmosphere, right? Heat up and turn all that energy, all that kinetic energy into heat using basically the Pika X material in there. So it's going to go into Mars, hit the atmosphere like that, right? And then eventually it's going to remove about 99% of its velocity there. Then it's going to kind of come down, fall towards Mars.
Are they able to make any use of that heat energy that's generated when they're aerobraking?
You have to give it off. You have to shed it away, because there's so much of it. You're taking all that energy that took you to leave Earth orbit.
Yeah.
Which is, imagine all that fuel energy.
I guess that's one of the weird, like 100 years from now things, is I can imagine nanoparticles that just take all that fuel and or all that heat energy and turn it into something. I don't know.
We're gonna. I think that'll be a big. I think there's going to be a lot of future interesting technology how to do it, because it's storing it too. Because you're basically, all that energy is now, however much chemical energy was here. That's how much kinetic energy there is that you have to absorb.
Right.
But you just shed it like this. So then things going to go in and land, just like we've seen the boosters land. 2 of these things, They'll probably have ROVs, some sort of robots or something like that. They're going to come out. And these are the unmanned ones, 2022, also with cargo, also with extra cargo. Because part of the beauty is when it's so cheap to send these to Mars compared to what we paid before, you're not going to have the Martian problem where your guy has to, make potatoes out of poo because you're going to no, we'll just put a bunch of Lunchables in here. We're fine. So you could put a ton of equipment and stuff that you're going to use 2 years later when in 2024, they're going to send 4 of these, okay? 4 of these, 2 manned, 2 unmanned, with people and cargo. I think like 12 people each or 24, something like that. So they're going to send 4 of these things to there. And at that time, you're going to have, hopefully, if everything works right, 6 of these things on the surface with 6 amounts of cargo, which ends up to being like
That's one of those moments where it's like the whole nature of sending humans there just feels so terrifyingly unsafe. But when you have a 6x redundancy of vehicles that could theoretically get on some kind of drift orbit back to planet Earth, and my guess is you send enough Lunchables to last someone the entire trip. I mean, that seems like suddenly, strange to say, reasonable.
Yeah, because you're now. Your cost, once you reduce it cost us over $1 billion in 1960s dollars to put a man on the moon. $1 billion per man on the moon. The economic model here to put a person on Mars, they're looking at is about $500,000.
$500,000?
$500,000.
Million. Like
$500,000.
Somebody
500,000.
listening right now can sell a condo and go to Mars.
If your condo is in California, yes, that was the goal, the price. And people go like, oh, well, how I afford this, whatever. If you're smart and you work for a startup company, the second and third waves going there, somebody will pay you to go.
Yeah.
It's like, I have friends who are tech divers and stuff, totally nothing to do with the reason I've been secret about what I'm up to, who, they go 900 feet, they go hundreds of feet underwater and go very, very deep. They're in very hostile environments. They work for companies that have business interests out there. Exploring Mars for materials, technology, and just technology survival on there is going to be a multi-billion-dollar business, as described in my book, How to Make Money on Mars. Is available free on my website. So if you want to go there, have some skills that are useful there, geology, whatever,
or at least be somebody who is up for handling risk. There's a friend of mine who's a magician who used to work on deep sea oil rigs, like hundreds of feet down at the bottom, to the tune where it's like, once you're down that low for any amount of time, it's going to be weeks and weeks of outgassing before you're able to even make it back to the surface. So you go out and you work, and then you go sleep in a capsule at the bottom of the ocean with this incredible crushing depth underneath you, and stuff like injuries happen on the job. Giant things collapse and crush fingers. And in his case, he went to the doctor. By the time he got back to the surface and he had a messed up finger, he was just like, well, hey, I'm a magician. They're like, yeah, we have to fuse everything in your middle finger. And he's like, well, can you just put a little crook in it so I can palm a card on there? And so they permanently fused his hand with a little bit of a bend in there, and he's able to palm a card just fine with it.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, that's what it's going to be like early on, but there's going to be so much industry there as far as understanding, looking around resource-wise, research, biotech. Not that you have to have biology you don't have to have life on Mars to find something out really interesting. We find crazy things when we grow things in weightlessness. What happens when we start growing bamboo on Mars inside habitats? The first Mars IPA, to just bring the hops back.
Sure.
Back.
And early on, I think a lot of it will be, forgive me for calling it gimmicky, but I think there'll be marketing hype surrounded with all of that Martian stuff. But it will fuel and tap into a genuine interest I think people have.
Yeah, I've been reading a book which I may talk about called Astoria, which was about basically the development of the West Coast and the plan to try to build an entire West Coast empire. And that was primarily based on seal fur. And seal fur was, they sold it in China because the mandarins love to wear it in their robes, and it sold big in Europe. It wasn't a vital thing to manufacturing or even really, it was kept you warm, but it was more of a luxury sort of thing. But entire empires were built around that. And that's the things that we sort of people are like, oh, well, what resource are we going to get from Mars? Like, pulling gold or whatever is not really the value there. It's going to be the other things. It's the things we don't know, but we invariably find that you go, oh, this is really useful and neat. So So that's the plan, kids. It's 2022. The goal is to send it there, but let's say it's 10 years delayed. It doesn't happen until 2032. Still ahead of schedule.
Man, I would love very, very much to still be alive to see this happen.
Well, in order for us to be alive to see this happen, Brian, we can't starve to death or die.
That's right. We're on financial life support, people. We're all look. You think we're kidding when we say we're about to die unless you contribute at patreon.com/weirdthings? Andrew did die. We had to build this very expensive replicant, and it was only through the generous contributions of 336 patrons that we were able to afford it.
I remember last week, the whole Patreon blog was, we're never going to mention that he's a robot.
Oh, well, look,
we can't tell if he's a robot.
I'll tell you what, if we're able to double our contributions, we'll start keeping our promises. That's a promise from me.
There we go. Go ahead on over there, patreon.com/weirdthings. Make sure you get your own RSS link. It's so simple. You just go ahead and get that, add it right there on mobile to whatever podcatcher that you use, iTunes or anything else, and you get your exclusive feed. That it gives you all the After Things episodes early. Man, it's the best deal on the internet. Head on over there, patreon.com/weirdthings.
Hear that, Jeff Bezos? We're the best deal on the internet. I have one other SpaceX news, sort of a follow back. Remember there was the Zuma mission that SpaceX launched this private payload, the secret payload.
This is the one that some people were trying to pin, like they lost contact with it, and SpaceX was very deliberate, like, hey man, we were contracted to get it into this orbit, and we got it into this orbit. Whatever happened after that,
we're not even saying what orbit. We were contracted to do a thing, and we did a thing.
Oh, they didn't even say okay. But I think a little bit of foresight might indicate that probably they put a thing into orbit.
Probably not.
Oh, really?
They did what? So the rumor was that SpaceX was hired basically was supposed to put a payload built by Northrop Grumman. We knew Northrop Grumman was the other contractor, that they built a payload for an agency of which we don't know. We presume it was an American space agency or American, agency, a spy agency, probably like NRO or some group like that. Anyhow, they were supposed to put this thing into orbit. And in order to do that, put an orbit, you have your first stage and your second stage. And your second stage has a thing called an adapter, a payload adapter, which is the thing that pushes that satellite away from the second stage. So SpaceX rocket launched, thing went up, and then people were trying to track this thing, and there were stories of fireballs and all that. And there was all sorts of conspiracy theories like, oh, maybe they want us to think that it didn't make it and all that. But it seemed pretty clear this thing did not make it. And then SpaceX was very quick to be like, hey, yeah, no, we did everything fine. All of our telemetry says everything happened fine. There was a Wall Street Journal report that came out and said, hey, this is like yesterday. Insiders say Zuma satellite plunged after SpaceX launch because of Northrop Grumman errors, report says.
Ooh.
So apparently what the story is, and this is all behind the scenes insider sources because nobody can talk on the record about it, they needed, because the satellite had very special equipment, very, very sensitive equipment, which sounds a lot like mirrors. And I've heard speculation that this could be a thing used to track like sea vessels from high latitudes and back and forth. Because if you want to track like somebody's not compliant with North Korean sanctions or whatever, you need to be able to track ships. That's one of the rumors I heard. So anyhow, Northrop Grumman's like, all right, we will build the payload adapter for this. This is going to be ours. We're going to build the payload adapter because we needed to have it do certain sorts of things, whatever. So apparently they built or modified the payload adapter so it was on them. Never been tested in space, which can be hard to do. So this thing did not disengage the satellite. So that was the problem.
Who was it that was... So I figured there's certain things that are inside the black box. We're never going to get full details on why Northrop Grumman had troubles or what happened behind the scenes at SpaceX. What I'm curious is, who was it that was first to start the smear campaign, to start immediately shouting, SpaceX, oh, that SpaceX sure didn't get to where it's got to go. Is that a case of a bunch of bloggers who have deadlines and just need some angle on the story? Or is that a case of possibly a campaign from... one of these players?
How about both? you have three. Yeah, you have three parties. The SpaceX party. You have tech columnists and bloggers, there's certain people who do commentary who work for lobbying firms for our rival companies, and often you read this very vitriolic, this is why SpaceX is incompetent, blah blah blah, and so and so represents some such space lobbying group, and then you look up that group and you see clients, SpaceX competitors, and you're like, well, this is just hanky. Third is maybe Northrop Grumman was very interested in trying to spin it as quickly as they possibly could because, side note, remember the James Webb Space Telescope was supposed to launch?
It did not.
What's that?
It did not launch?
Not yet. Remember, that was a thing planned in the 1990s, which is going to be the most awesome space telescope ever. And, it's going to launch next 2 years. Nope, keeps getting pushed back, and it got pushed back again because of manufacturing problems and all that. Who made it?
Northrop Grumman.
So you think this is just a case of pay no attention to the man behind the curtain?
Well, look, this is, they make their money based on how their contracts with these organizations. Like that's the business, right? So Northrop this is from the Verge article. Northrop is the main contractor of the telescope and is currently integrating large pieces of the spacecraft at its company's facilities in Redondo Beach, California. However, NASA recently announced that the James Webb's launch will have to be delayed until 2020.
Read the next part.
Due to a number of mistakes and delays that were made at Northrop during the construction process.
Oh. So, and that's a case where you probably have the best engineers in the world. You probably have among the best engineers in the world working there. But it gets to be an organizational problem. If somewhere along the line you have engineers outside their expertise, managers outside their expertise, you have people saying we've got to do it for this cost or whatever. We've all been in programs or projects where we've seen that happen, where you get this, the people here are super capable. If you put them over at SpaceX, they'd be doing amazing work. The people at this layer here, no, let's go spend it. Let's do this, making those decisions. And so I do not want to disparage anybody who works there or doing something like this because it's not like they're in there going, I don't know what to do,
So there are many people, in fact, many people who may be listening to my voice right now that are gainfully employed by companies like Northrop Grumman and Northrop Grumman possibly themselves that will tell you these are companies, because of the nature of how they make money with their contracts, where people, number one, never leave, and number two, is a gigantic bureaucratic. It is as bureaucratic as the organizations that they are effectively just private arms for, which is, these government organizations where a lot of times there's deadlines, there's promises that are made, there's subcontracting. So this will go out to another company that you can get it made faster, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be compatible because they're people. Now you're plugging into cross bureaucracies. And a lot of times these things get screwed up and there is no benefit for them to do it faster and cheaper because the profit model is we continue to get these contracts at escalating prices. So I don't think that it's necessarily a brain power issue with them. I think that it's, and any of the people that I've talked to, they will tell you this is the reason why things get screwed up is just because of how the system works there.
Hey, 100%. And so our frustration comes from organizationally, there is issues, there's a problem there, and that's what's frustrating. But as far as the people on the ground who are doing this sort of stuff and all that, you have our apologies. We don't mean to disparage the organization you work for, but
I do think it's an interesting point. Is Northrop Grumman more than 40 years old? It's been around a long time, right?
Yeah.
So you know what didn't quite last 40 years? East Germany. And when I did a series of shows in Germany, our bus driver was big on his brakes and his established times to take time off or whatever. And there was a lot of like, well, wait, what are you going to do? We're not going to be able to make it through. And then somebody was just like, oh, something, used a word I didn't understand. And then they translated, they're like, he's East German. And even as long as 15 years after East Germany fell and Germany became unified, there was still the echoes of different culture, because when you live in a forced bureaucratic culture where there is no competition, and it's like you're better off just keeping your mouth shut and doing things slowly than taking any, I guess, a culture that does not reward risks, then that shapes things, and it takes a while for that culture to that fist to unclench, is the way I would think of it. And I am hopeful, like both of you guys. I mean, these are talented individuals, but now they are being forced to compete in an environment that was not big on competition for the previous 40 years.
And they do lots of things. I mean, they were both building airplanes in World War II, and then adapted to the space program, then doing it. And part of it, though, is you get a lot of these companies, they evolve very, like, I would say that, like, Microsoft was a company that they had some of the best scientists. They were hiring computer scientists in the private enterprise just about before really anybody else was outside of the NSA at scale. Amazing computer scientists. You remember, you'd see a lot of amazing Microsoft Vision projects and Microsoft Tech and all that, but like, you didn't feel like it when you were using Windows, because Microsoft's strongest point was really its sales team. It's people able to do business sales and commercial sales and stuff, because that's where the money was, not even so much in the product, but getting somebody who had the connections that, oh, Nike needs to, entirely, redo their entire computer system, or we need to do a point of sale system and stuff. And their sales team was amazing. And then when it comes to contractors like Northrop Grumman, they have the best lobbyists. They have the best experienced team in the world when it comes to doing that. Tory Bruno, who's, head of a ULA, he's an engineer. He's a very bright guy. He will go into the SpaceX Reddit forums and correct people and engage, and has, does a wonderful job of representing ULA and why we're cost effective, really, if you take a look at what we're really offering from a full package point of view and stuff. And it makes you aware of, like, man, that's that guy's values. You start to read this, go, yeah, this is why you need to pay $300 million instead of $80 million. You're like, wait a second, So it's a skill.
Well, yeah.
So, pointed out in the chat, Grumman built the lunar lander. They built the Eagle. So, they've got, amazing history. But like, I like to say is like, NASA did it, NASA did this. I'm like, they're all retired. The average age of a NASA employee when we went to the moon was 29. The average age now is like 48 or something like that. Not there's anything wrong with being older. Let's get that straight. But there is a different degree of,
of appetite for risk.
Exactly. You're younger. You feel like you can take on more and all that. So one more, it's totally on space thing. This is a very interesting. Actually, there was two things I wanted to do. Let's do this one first. I'll do this. They did a study on learning styles, right? Remember how we're told, like, I'm more of a visual learner. I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. Like, just about every kid, if you went through public school, you probably were told this is how you learn. Well, they did some studies where they had people try to learn the same tasks, and then they had each person learn according to their modality, or they switched them up to a different one. They found no difference. Basically says, this was from Business Insider, the idea that we have a learning style is bogus. Here's why. Well, we'll say a study shows that it's bogus. I don't like this. Latest study is the state of science. No, latest study indicates, we get that all the time. Like, oh, now this study supersedes the other one. But it appears to be that we've been lied to. If you've been told this is how you learn, or whatever your best strategy for doing it, it may not be the case.
That's interesting. So my initial knee-jerk reaction, which I'm not going to claim is well thought out at all, is I would love to read the article to sort of understand the distinction between having a favorite modality versus effective. Like, I have no doubt that I tend to be a visual person, and I have no doubt that I don't know. Can I no longer even say that? Is that the kind of thing where it's like that's a bogus concept? Like, I guess I enjoy when learning through a visual type modality. Can you have a preference without a change in efficacy?
I think the study was narrowed down to what people were told were their learning styles, that you were told this is your learning style, and then we're going to test if you have greater retention using that style or another. A preferred one is different, and I understand you're wanting to have a distinction there, and I think that the problem this applies to in schools where they're told, oh, so and so has been tested to be a visual learner, so we're going to teach him this way because that's the only way Sally's going to learn, and then if I know, no, Sally is just as capable of learning through these other methods, etc. And I think I don't. Yeah, as far as preference, I would think that I tend to be I like to consume my books by listening to them, but I like to learn new skills by watching them, which would seem kind of obvious for most people.
Sure, but what's funny is, at least in my case, nothing drives me more nuts than when I talk about all the books I've read and somebody says, well, you didn't read them. And I just want to punch them right in their dumb, stupid faces. Like, no, I have effectively downloaded this narrative piece of fiction into my brain where it lives happily and healthily. Who cares?
Brian,
who are you to tell me what way is right or wrong?
An illiterate can do what you did.
Oh, I see. You're racist.
Boom, got him.
Yeah. Of course, like the only way I consume is by listening to them. But still, Brian.
That's interesting. I would love to dive into more detail as far as what this actually means. Because I mean, number one, it's always good to have more information, especially and certainly when that information subverts the normal expectation. I mean, that's part of the learning process, right? That's how we figure stuff out. What I worry about is all the hangers-on to these studies, for example, government funding or government mandates about the way things need to be taught one way or the other can swing wildly based on a single study, and then it's years later that we find out that study that counteracted the other study is now counteracted or whatever. I worry about overcorrection, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, well, the problem is that there is a bias towards something when it sounds really cool and neat. This is what we will do, and education can be hard, but often I think part of the problem is that like you would think that we'd be much further along with where we are in education, how we understand how people learn, but you realize how little research is really done. How often it's just experts who take one effing study, and like, aha, we know what this is now. And somebody reads this, and people in academia who should know better go like power poses. Power poses was a thing.
Yeah, Amy Cuddy's study, she did a TEDx or TED Talk talking about power poses. This is actually a great example because there's this whole kind of tsunami wave of people realizing how few studies are able to be replicated because of this this inherent bias. And I want to say it was a Freakonomics episode that they did on this shocking revelation that very, very few of the established studies, because number one, there's a bias. If you're a young PhD, do you want to make a name for yourself by doing something possibly revolutionary in a field that's never been studied before? Or do you want to replicate a 20-year-old study about this one thing? And of course, there's a bias. It's like, well, don't replicate the dumb old stuff. How are you going to get ahead doing that? So instead, everybody does new stuff. Second of all, let's say you have a theory and a postulate of what's going to happen. You do 100 trials and it doesn't yet show up. It's slightly indicating your theory might be right, but now you have the opportunity to make a decision. There's a decision gate that should not be there. You could decide that, well, I've done 100 trials and it doesn't seem like there's much of an influence, or you can decide to keep going. And so people decide to keep going and then getting more data. Maybe the data proves their theory incorrect, or maybe that extra data, maybe doing 50 or 100 more trials puts you in a position where like, now I have a revolutionary finding and I want to put it out. That is going to not be a replicable thing because it was based because the support for it is an artifact of the fact that you made the decision to keep on going when you didn't like the results thus far, even though on paper that sounded like a good decision at the time, because after all, you're just getting more data. How could that screw anything up?
Yeah, and this is a case where follow-up studies on that said maybe power poses really aren't that powerful. And that was, a lot of people were upset. I was in a classroom and a teacher was teaching this, and then afterwards I'm like, it's been really hard to replicate that study. They've had a lot of problems. Like, yeah, well, I'm going to keep teaching it. I'm like, all right, but I mean, I think you like the idea of telling people if you do this, it's one of those many things that fall into like, oh, emulating people. That's how you develop rapport sometimes, or it's how you make people hate you. And we like the quick fixes. So I have one more. Hey, maybe not so case. So did you know that if you take a word and you scramble the letters in between, you can read that word? You can still understand the word.
I think we've all had that forward from our grandparents.
Yeah, right. That's an OG. That's an HOF chain email, right?
Yeah. Now read this one.
According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters of a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter are in the right place. The rest can be a total mess. You can still read it without a problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole.
Okay, Bryce, go to another example, and you can there.
Sure.
That's one we've all seen, right?
Yep,
That's
that's the one that got forwarded.
Yeah, somebody went in to go look and said, I want to pull up this Cambridge study.
Oh, I'm sure there's no such thing.
There's no such Cambridge study. And they said, okay, let's try this. Let's really randomize the letters in the words.
Okay, so
And
I believe. Here we go. It's a little tough to make sure we don't show anything
To
off.
be fair, they never said it was from Cambridge.
Justin, can you do this one?
The acknowledgement, which comes in a report of a new mice experiment that didn't indoctrinate such mantis, isn't the canny a Rotrockin of their earlier findings, but it goes a long way to showing that the alarm bells should probably never have been sounded in the first place.
I don't know. That's 80% effective though. At that point, I mean, granted, yes, there was. I'm certain. I believe you if you say there's no Cambridge study, but I mean, I feel like given a little bit of time, we could figure out all the words on that.
Yeah. I mean, you're able to kind of go, but let's go further into some of those examples.
Brian, why don't you do this one?
Oh dear. Something of time. Nope. Oh, good God. Okay. Season of Miss and Malo is a close.
I stand corrected.
Bosom friend of the conspiring with him to load and I got nothing with the fruit and vines. The fruit and vines that run. Is this a case where the less inherently obvious a sentence is, the more challenging it is?
Yes, and it's that and really that's where it's less obvious what you like when you're reading sort of a newsline story, whatever. It's kind of straightforward. This was the Autumn by Keats, so you're reading poetry. So you did better than I did. You did better than I did. You know, I'm like,
but it was a much more challenging puzzle. Like the first one, very much is a magic trick. We're like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I have some super gift that I didn't realize I had. And then that last one was like, hold on, let me get my Sudoku pencil out.
Yeah, the last one you were trying to decode them. Now you can. It's not scrambled to the point that you can't find out, but it's not. You're not reading them like you do the first one, and so. Another one of those things that people are like, oh yeah, you can actually tell from the first and last, like maybe, but that would have probably worked its way into dyslexia teaching and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So here are some rules they applied it.
Yeah,
Justin, you want to read those?
It's easier to do with short words because there are fewer variables. Function words for grammatical structure like as, the, and a tend to stay the same because they're so short. Switching adjacent letters, such as porbelm for problem, is easier to translate than switching more distant letters, such as plorebum. None of the words in the meme are jumbled to make another word. Davis gives the example of wowthit versus witohut. This is because words that differ only in the position of two adjacent letters, such as calm or clam or trial or trail, are more difficult to read. So basically, the article is saying that the meme did not did not do enough jumbling. It's very specific, small jumbling that it's doing.
Mm-hmm. Which one? And there was prior research onto this, to be sure. There wasn't like this didn't appear out of the ether, but it's just.
But this is a case of somebody constructing a magic trick using this as the MacGuffin, to the glue to hold the idea together.
And now we've seen that used repeatedly as an example of our brain works like this. We can actually, because the example's powerful. You're like, yeah, I guess we can do this. And I've told you, like, oh, brain's actually really good at being able to do this and stuff, because I assume the people sending it to me, the researchers there, that, like I'm just as gullible as everybody else when it comes to arguments from authority.
This is, oh, doggone it. I had a thought queued up, but I've lost it because I'm an old man now. Never mind.
Were either of you ever taught like that you had a learning style or anything like that when you were in school?
I don't know that I was. Oh, although I did just remember my thought. This means like this has entered the pantheon of those pseudoscientific ideas, like that we only use 10% of our brain or whatever. Like those tropes that are easy to say and replicate and pass on, but that don't necessarily stand up to scrutiny. I did not get a full analysis that I remember about, although. Yeah, I guess taking some kind of quiz. I remember coming up with the idea that I was a visual learner. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know if I was ever really told that I needed to learn a certain thing. Most of the communication between teachers and myself were about how I wouldn't shut up and I was hyperactive. But, other than that, there really wasn't much, and this is a way to cure it. It was just shut up and read.
Yeah. Interesting. Bryce?
I don't think so. I don't remember having taken any sort of test or assessment of whether I'm a visual or an audio.
The best
oral.
modality to take in information.
I don't know that I had that.
We all have our preferences, though.
I would say that I tend to be visual, but I think that must just be inertia, that I got that thought in my head at some point and held on to it, because I would say I have now been doing Audible and audio spoken entertainment long enough that I think the majority of the information in my brain was brought to me through audio inputs just by availability.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say that my diet for consuming things has been more like, I listen to audiobooks because I have anxiety about just sitting down and reading and like committing everything to this experience. That's how I got into that. That's how I became a fan of audiobooks. But then again, I would say I probably would prefer to learn instructions for things based on a YouTube video, because then I can see it more than reading a description of it, where I feel like I've read enough of those that were either they were wrong slightly or it was slightly outdated or something, or I skipped over some key part and then screwed up. Whereas I feel like if I'm watching, a tutorial for something or a physical thing, then I can understand it a little bit better. So I guess I've never really thought that I am an X learner, but I certainly have assigned certain tasks that I feel are better and easier completed if I deal with them in a certain way.
Interesting. Yeah, I would say that, audiobooks has become my preferred way of consuming books, because partially for time management, I love to walk and I love to read. And if I can walk and listen to an audiobook, I feel like it's the same sort of thing for me. In that way, an hour spent walking is an hour with an audiobook, and that's worked out really well. As far as sitting down to read a book, if I'm in a comfortable place to go do it, I'll do it and I'll feel fine. Like a couple minutes in, I'll forget what I'm in. And I've got a really, really nice Kindle, and now it actually supports Audible too, which is great. So I can use it with my Bluetooth, but I still like I like a paperback book. I like to have that too.
So Still at Work in the chat says, anyone listen to an audiobook while reading the news? I would submit that I don't think that's possible. It seems like this is one of the things that I first read about in Richard Feynman's book. I think it's Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. But he talks about how he figured out that he seemed to be able to do two things at once as long as they used vastly different symbolic parts of his brain. He could listen to words and perform a math calculation, but he could not speak or read one thing while hearing another thing. And I found that to be the same case in we've talked before, the moments I'm happiest are when I'm working out, maybe on an exercise bike or whatever, listening to an audiobook and doing some kind of symbolic transformation game, like anything from playing Drop 7 to Hearthstone up to a point. Occasionally it gets challenging enough that I have to press pause on the audiobook to give my full attention to it.
Yeah, I can, when I write a book, I can listen to soundtracks. The soundtracks are fine. If I'm coding, I can have TV, I can have Netflix playing or whatever, because it's just I'm not using the language part of my brain. And I know I've known some people like, oh, I can do both or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you that you're not special. But I guarantee you, if you actually measure the amount of time that it takes you to acquire your attention like this, you're going to probably find out that you're just as like everybody else, or maybe even worse, because you're losing stuff out on that.
Well, and that's not, I guess the fairest way to say is there have been studies about that. For example, there have been things where they play one set of audio in one ear, a different set of audio in the other ear. And when you're trying to process two things, you may have the illusion of multitasking because you're time slicing back and forth. But when it comes to being tested for retention, very, very poorly. It doesn't seem to work out very well.
Justin, same for you, or?
Yeah. I would say I oftentimes, if I'm listening to an audiobook, I'll probably check Twitter. But if you were to probably quiz me on exactly that moment in the audiobook that I was flipping through Twitter, I would probably know it. I would guess that I would know it less than otherwise, but at the same time, maybe not, because maybe I'm just like the way I process Twitter is enough that even though I'm missing that bit, I'm getting enough of the whole that I could probably pass a quiz.
Well, especially that cursory, like, worth my attention or not. Like my guess is if it, 9/11, the sequel were happening, you would very quickly reassess your priorities in that moment, right?
And certainly, if I'm then going to write something on Twitter, I'll pause it. But if I'm just sort of skimming through it, I might be able to do it. Or if I'm like looking through a headline or just sort of skimming through a lead or something, I'll probably be able to. I'll be more inclined to keep the party going. And then if I'm diving in, that's where I'll pause.
I've noticed that if I know already what I need to do, like to write in a text or an email and I'm talking to somebody, I can, if it's already like, I pretty much know the exact sentence, I can talk to somebody and write out that as I talk to them, whatever, but not for great lengths of time. But, if I get on autopilot, but anyhow. Oh, I guess that's kind of end of the show, guys. That's the way it works, right?
I mean, we are almost an hour in at this point, so I guess we could just wrap it up.
I mean, unless we wanted to go to another installment of Journey Quest!
Previously on
Johnny Quest!
Oh, you're back!
That's right!
For a second helping of verbal applesauce.
I'll give you the password to our Gmail account. The codes to the nuclear bomb.
I open up the gate where we were keeping good clone Bryce.
It's
bound and gagged.
All right, remind me it's been so long. I think we killed a Bryce. We may or may not have good Bryce around anymore.
No, you guys were at the weigh-in, right? You were doing the weigh-in.
Right, for our big wrestling match.
Right. And when you two, when Brian and Justin and what you thought was good Bryce showed up, you gave him the nuclear codes.
Yeah, that's
thinking
right.
that he had killed bad Bryce, but then you went back to the RV
and we found good Bryce, bound and
gagged in his little hidey hole.
And so, meanwhile, it was just another random Bryce clone that got exploded.
Well, you tasted the blood, and it tasted sweet like Caro syrup.
Oh, that's right. Could be that I just developed a taste for cannibalism.
Yeah, and it said on the side there, a little detail, Town of Hawking Prop Supply Company.
Okay.
We made Will Byers. So gentlemen, you're back there in the RV, and you're getting ready for the fight. There is bound and gagged Bryce.
All right, well, I immediately removed the bindings and the gag. Good Bryce. Good Bryce.
Oh, hey.
Quick, say something that only good Bryce would say.
I don't.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, we got him.
You got it.
What happened?
They you guys went off for the weigh-in, and I was waiting here for the word, and then these goons busted in and tied me up.
Who are they working for?
Who do you think they were working for?
You got to make sure.
Well, they
Did
were
they
wearing
announce? Did they announce who they're working for as they bound you and gagged you?
They did. They knocked on the door. They go, "Open up, Bryce's secret police," which is not very secretive or stealthy.
Well, real is the nuke in the back? Can I run to the back to look for the nuke?
It's not there.
Did they take the nuke?
I mean,
Yeah.
They also have the codes.
How did they get the codes?
You know what? It's a long story that's not really germane to the conversation. We've got bigger fish to fry. Also,
You weren't gone that long.
you know what?
couldn't imagine.
Here, put the gag back on him. It's fine. It's fine.
What's
No,
going on?
no,
What's going on?
Back off. That's just a new joke he's doing. Don't pay attention to that.
Okay, Justin, what are we gonna do? They've got the nuke and the code. I mean,
I think, Brian, that it's about time we faced up and made a real strong decision about what we're doing and our actions and where we're at. We really face the music and
get out of
leave.
town.
Leave. A burn rubber. Let's get the hell out of Dodge. They got a nuke and the codes. The only way to win is to leave.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I don't know why we're supposed to be rescuing your wife and finding Andrew Main out on the West Coast. What are we doing in Bryce Vegas?
Well, that's when Bryce goes, "Ugh." And the thing is, the goon said something about taking the atomic bomb and putting it in the Oakland Hyperloop tunnel.
Also, I think if you don't do this, I die.
Well,
I
okay.
think he signed a contract
That's
killed
neither here nor there.
I'm the good price, so
I mean, you can come with us. I mean, are you infected or something?
I don't know, but I imagine someone would be after you
Man,
and
Justin,
or me.
we had this whole plan. We were gonna Dave this MFer. We were gonna install Good Bryce.
All right, yeah, wait a minute. Because we abandoned that when we thought that Good Bryce had been corrupted.
Well, and
But
we
now
thought it
know
was
that
good.
We still have a Good Bryce.
Yeah.
But
Well, he's
he
still a
knows
clone.
we have a
I mean,
right.
you were told. You're told.
But
he was
apparently
a clone.
is a dime a dozen in this town. I just in fact
The
I,
other
I,
one you never saw it move. It was more just like a latex Bryce.
I stick
doll,
my head
which is
out
a
the
thing to
window.
sell in
I
Bryce
stick my
Vegas,
head
by
out the window and I shout to passersby, "Who here knows of any clones of Bryce?"
A lot of lookalikes, not a lot of clones.
I'd be like, no, I need a clone. We're having a birthday party and we're paying top dollar. Give me a clone of Bryce and I'll give you 1,000 Bryce bucks.
I am a geneticist, and I'm going to tell you that cloning man was extremely hard, particularly because of the surface methylation of DNA. And if you're asking for a cloned human of Bryce, I don't think that technology exists. Somebody's been lying to you.
I say, here, enjoy this Sacagawea dollar, and I throw it at him.
Like,
And then
oh, I wanted a Harriet Tubman. Fine,
it's like,
thank you.
give it back. That doesn't exist.
No.
Okay. All right. Hey, Justin, I just did a little bit of research, and I think we might still be able to Dave this situation.
Okay, but now we're talking about a surgical military strike because he knows that we have a clone.
Yeah, probably shouldn't have told him that.
And he does have the nuclear codes for the nuclear bomb that you gave him.
Well,
I lean
we
my head
know
back.
that. He ran up into our stuff and just bound our clone and then stole our nuclear weapon. Now, the fact that we gave him the codes
Oh, so you
via
did give him the
our
codes.
email, that was a real boner on us. That's on us. We're gonna have to take that one to heart. But going forward, which is what we want to do, let's maintain a positive mental attitude, PMA. If we are going to Dave Bryce, then the only way to do it would be to install Bryce while we're fighting the actual Bryce and then reveal that Bryce to be a fraud.
Okay. Yeah, it's got to be like
Fights in 2 minutes. Knock, knock, knock. Sorry, I should have knocked before saying that. That was rude of me.
Okay, I lean my head
Knock,
out the
knock.
window. I lean my head out the window,
Knock.
and I say, "Does this Bryce Vegas have some kind of? Does this Bryce Vegas have any version of the Jabberwockies here? The dance
The
guys
dance
that wear
crew
the masks?
from America's Best Dance Crew.
Yes, those are the ones.
We've got the Brycer Walkies.
Great. Tell them we're hiring them immediately to be our pit crew, and they got to come down right away.
Okay, we'll send them right over.
Okay, great. All right, listen.
Who is that person? You just screamed out the window.
It's okay. It's like
You're
that moment.
secreting
It's that
right
moment
now.
that
Vegas,
Scrooge.
I make anything happen.
Look, man, Scrooge leaned his head out the window and told some kid to bring him a turkey. I could get the Jabberwockies, right? All right. So here's what we do. All right. We get the Jabberwockies in. We make a big deal about how the Jabberwockies are a pit crew, right?
Hey, it's the Brycer Walkies. We were right across the street at the Mermaid getting some fried Twinkies.
Okay,
What
that's
do you-
great. There's 5 of you. Look, I need 2 more of your masks, and also congratulations. This guy, his name is Bringo. He's gonna be your 6th member of the Brycewalkies. Okay.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Look, don't worry about it.
Hey, look, yeah. All right. Number one, all of you guys, congratulations. You're now entered into a high-stakes game of rock, paper, scissors. And the person who loses doesn't get to be a Brycer Walkie today. Congratulations. You get the day off. We're going to go ahead and throw this friend of ours in your costume. Don't ask questions or I'll punch you in the nuts. Here we go. And then they do that.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, listen, you guys at the pit crew, look, we're going to have to do a high-pressure substitution. Look, this is a blues riff, and B, watch me for the changes and try to keep up. Let's go. And we head straight into town.
Hey, I'm the Brycer Walkie guy you left in your RV. Is it okay if I eat this beef jerky?
Yeah, it's poisoned. Also, it's human flesh.
Sounds great. I was at the Mermaid eating fried Twinkies. Obviously, I'm not discriminating.
Okay, great. All right, listen. We're going to have to find the right moment to pull this switch. We got 1 extra mask. We're just going to swap out the mask. You 4 Jabberwockies, you're going to hold down the 5th one. Don't worry about who it is. Don't think real hard about what he tells you to do. Everything he says is a lie.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fight you've been waiting for.
Here we go.
It's being announced on the Bryce Vegas PA system. It's right here in the Brycer's Palace. Right next to the Bruxor.
The Brycer's Palace.
All right. Hey, Bri.
What?
Bri,
What?
Here's what we do.
Yeah.
All we need to do is get Bryce out of his...
Cocktail? You guys want a cocktail? Wow.
yeah,
that
actually, yes,
cocktail
I do.
looks a lot like Bryce.
Yeah, do you have any IPAs?
No. Brian, we're not taking drinks. We're not...
Dude, they're
you want to use
free.
poison? Let me just shoot poison right in your eye. How about I
Fine,
just poison?
fine.
You want me to take a poison gun and poison
Fine.
you right up
No,
your nose?
Look, fine. No, I'm sorry. I guess we're having the boring version of the Bryce Vegas experience. Go ahead, my lady. All right, sorry.
all right.
You were saying.
Here's what he's got to get him out of the mech suit, and we got to throw him into the Brycer Walkies, and then have our Bryce emerge and say, "You want to know what? That was a mighty throw. I am now calling off this fight. Anyway, see you later."
Okay,
That's
great.
it.
That's great. Okay. So and then I rev up my my chainsaw arm and I walk out and I'm like
Big red carpet. There's a big red carpet leading into the Coliseum. So you guys are up front, and you got the Brycer Walkies behind you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Y'all ready for this?
Now you notice they're standing astride of the carpet is a statue of Bryce. We're talking bigger than the Colossal of Rhodes. Okay, this thing is humongous. Okay, this thing is like 300-400 feet tall, and it's Bryce holding up one arm up in the air with your head, Brian, and the other hand he's got Justin's head. And this fit, yep. And but looking at you kind of like this, a little. Did I do something wrong?
Oh, did I do that?
There we go. There
A
we
little
go.
bit of Urkel.
And it moves because, you know, they've got using some projection mapping on there.
He was like, don't focus on that. We're just here to fight. We're just here to fight.
walk right underneath it. I'm not saying that all of a sudden you think that it's raining or that the statue is doing something
Oh,
to you.
stop! This guy's an animal.
It's a condensation thing. They say the engineers like, we're sorry, it's the condensation builds up there. We can't help it.
Look, I say, Bryce Walkies, shield me, and I hope they pull out umbrellas.
They do. They pull out umbrellas.
Nailed it.
And start doing an amazing umbrella dance number. The fifth one's not so good though. The fifth one's a little bit lagging behind.
He's
it.
trying. He's got a lot of heart.
Yeah,
that's
as
right.
long as he just play the tambourine.
So, all right, we keep on going. Hopefully, we're
You
not.
get mobbed by the crowd. You get separated from your Brycer walkies.
Okay. Well,
But you see a boombox on the ground from a street performer.
I track them. I hit play because we all know Brycer Walkies are drawn to dope beats like moths to a flame.
Yeah, it's like, we'll make all these dank sounds, and they'll have no choice but to follow us into hell itself.
All of a sudden, you hear the most amazing mix-up between like whoever,
Whoever and the other one.
whoever.
Oh my God, these don't go together at all, but they totally work.
Man, I'll tell you what, that was that moment of whoever and the other one finally being mixed together. You never realized until you heard it.
I never really appreciated the other one until I heard.
Whoever was really more my mom's thing, and then you just hear it with the other one, and then it kind of makes sense.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully, Bryce Walkies, assemble.
They finally fight their way through the crowd.
All right, look, let's just go. We got to let's go. And so I in fact I rev my chainsaw arm and I just sort of just bat it back and forth to beat out a path like we're bushwhacking our way through this thing.
People cheer. Some people just run up, open up their chests, their shirts to have you cut them across the chest.
I mean, I just give them a little nick. I
Yay!
say, all right.
The future dead man nicked me.
about that name, Future Dead Men. Can we? Never mind.
Yeah, of course, name for the whoever classic single, Future Dead Guy.
Future Dead Guy Party. Who could ask for more? I hope I never get mashed up with the other one no more.
It's so weird that he called that out.
Years
Then-
before
but
the
he did
mashup.
it.
And so
Wow.
you enter in the arena, and it is huge. It is huge, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, the fight to end all fights, the feud without end that is coming to a close.
Bryce Walkies, look, rub our shoulders, loosen us up.
Start rubbing your shoulders, patting you up. Like,
Justin, do you
in
have
this
your mech on?
corner,
Yeah, I do.
Brian and Justin. Anyhow, now, ladies and gentlemen, for who you've come to see, the man with the plan, the master of disaster, the guy that pays my check and keeps my family hidden away from me in case I decide to run away, your Lord and Emperor, he who shall not be named, but we have a temporary permission to name him, the one and only Bryce. All of a sudden,
All right, I make a jerk off motion with my giant chainsaw hand, like. Oh, it's
it's
on.
building up. The crowd's doing the chanting. Bryce. It's growing louder. Bryce. People are stomping. Bryce. Getting louder. Bryce. We're working up a frenzy. Bryce. Some bleachers collapse from people stomping on them, and there's horrific screams as about 1,000 people die. And everybody's like, yay! Apparently it happens every show. It's not a
lit.
building code issue.
I point
You
out
look
that
up, you see there's laser lights coming from the ceiling, and not actually ceiling. Actually, the roof is opened up. Lasers are shining through, and you're like, this hurts my eyes. Like can't even be legal, and like half the audience is getting like permanent eye damage now. Okay, blinding lights. Then all of a sudden, this
big, huge shaft of light descends into the center of the ring, and floating down with his arms outstretched and giant wings, mind you, bat-like wings, but just levitating down to the stage with a big steel mask, massive horns that go upright like this, stainless steel rivets across his gloves with big blades sticking out there, chest armor like Rom the Space Knight, if you remember the reference.
Oh
okay?
my God, I do remember Rom. Yeah.
Gleaming as impossibly powerful as you can imagine, descends onto the stage, mech armor and everything, larger than life.
Oh.
Bryce.
What's up?
All right,
What's
we
up?
gonna do this or not?
Hey, give me a mic. I asked for a mic.
Now you're still, by the way, you're still in the walkway too. There, you're not in the ring yet.
Okay, jog.
All right. Can we?
Stop.
I want to get to the
you
ring.
got it. He's like, you shall wait right there. Do you think you're ready to fight me?
You know what? We were born ready to fight you.
Yeah. Hey, you want to know what? What do you say we make things interesting? What
Well,
do you say?
Let's first, we have some challengers that I have, out of the kindness of my heart, agreed to let them have first dibs at you.
Boo! Look, where's our manager? We didn't agree to multi-card.
All of a
fight.
sudden, a
This is-
roll-top door opens up, and a school bus drives through. I give you zombie plague families that you may remember from way back that you abandoned.
For the record, I was not into that, and you were definitely into leaving.
But you're into leaving now that there's a nuclear bomb here.
It's like that was like 20 minutes ago. Like we then decided to try and Dave him.
Okay. Like how this is a PR disaster for our team. He's parading.
There's no way, Brian. We got to cut through all of them.
Okay, you first.
All right. I leap heroically into the superhero pose in front of the children, and I then look at them and give them a bring it on look. I punch them all as hard as I can.
And then I turn to the audience like, oh, geez, this guy. Whoa, I don't support this, even though I'm on his team. Whoa.
The children are all dead now. They've been punched because they're already like pretty weakened. Now Bryce says, I give you one monkey army abandoned by Brian.
I turn it up like 275, 154, oh, 73. I missed you guys. And I hold my arms wide as if to embrace a loving, long-lost child.
And all you see are snarling teeth and just the rage of chimpanzees that have been left on their own and now just want to tear you apart.
I hang my
Don't
head
worry,
down.
Brian. I leap up and start punching all of them. I'm punching. I'm a punching machine with my mech. I'm just
Shake my
uppercutting
head.
them. And then I'm trying to uppercut one and then uppercut another one with my other arm. So
I turn to the audience and I shout, they're not really themselves. They're infected. I think Bryce made a virus that made them evil.
The chimps are still swarming at you, Brian.
Okay, I turn on, I say engage Death Blossom, and I rev the engine of my chainsaw and I spin around like Wonder Woman.
That is a Last Starfighter reference for those of you who were not born in the 80s.
Yeah, but then I spin around like Wonder Woman, transforming, and like I'm like, kill them all.
And you kill them. Chimp heads fly everywhere.
God, and I
love
weep,
them.
I
You were
weep-
like fawning over them a
I
minute
weep
ago.
openly. I weep openly, and I turn to the audience and I say, since the loss of my family, these months ago, I've not encountered this level of despair. I loved these chimps as my own. I kill one more, and then I get him, and I'm like, it's not cool, not cool.
One's covered in blood and reaches a hand up and goes, Papa, Papa. And then flips you the bird.
I punch his hand so hard it flies off his body.
And I like, now you are like your papa, number 276.
Now, Bryce, anything else coming their way?
Well, over in this corner, you may remember this fine gaggle of guys. The
This gaggle of guys.
It's kind of like the Vegas Chippendales show or the Thunder Down Under. It's gaggle of guys.
gaggle of-
That's the new introduction for this show. Welcome our fine gaggle of guys, Andrew, Brian, and Justin.
And so the fog machine kicks on, and you start to see in comes dozens and dozens of what looks like medieval knights who don't look any happy. Don't look very happy to see you guys again.
I lean over to Justin and stage whisper, "Do you remember killing or abandoning any medieval knights?"
It's been a while. Oh wait, no, we were in a medieval thing. Remember when we were?
That was like in a different reality when we impersonated the king.
Yeah,
And we told everyone he was alive.
Yeah, it turns out we were like still just in the warehouse. It was just really elaborate.
But we
Well, they're
did
here.
I look around for a corpse that I could pretend is still alive and call their ruler, but upon seeing none, I begrudgingly jump up on Justin's back, grab the handles, and rev my chainsaw as I say, "Forward!"
I begin charging forward, punching my hands as hard as I can.
I slash back and forth, left to right, being very careful to not cut off Justin's head because we're a team.
And you mow your way through them. And now, in this corner, cloth gets pulled away. There is a large, furry, adorable sloth. Hey guys.
I say,
Yes, mother.
You wanna-
I just point loudly and just say, that dude is a rapist. He is a
You want to
rapist.
go to a slumber party?
you know what? I don't even attack him. I join in the chorus. We go, rapist, rapist,
Oh.
rapist. And I start pumping my hands up to get the crowd to say it too. Rapist, rapist.
And
I do-
then
I-
Go ahead.
in the mech, I execute a flawless backhand spring that then launches me, hopefully, over his head so I can land on him, crushing his skull under my foot.
Ray was his brother.
Oh, no.
I was
like,
a victim.
your brother. I say, and
You
now,
wanted a memorial sleepover,
I say,
Brian.
and now your watch has ended. And then I turn to the audience.
And then I'm like,
Ah,
his
but I was a
only
cannibal,
thing
so it's
aside
okay.
from rape was lying that he was his brother.
And in this corner, an announcer comes out and says, "Next time on Journey Quest."
Ah! Dude, I'll tell you what, man.
Punch the narrator.
We came back in full force. That episode delivered, man. That was some epic visuals. We still got a chance to Dave this situation.
Yep. Hope
We are all
return.
heroes. Dave the villain.
See,
Super fast picks, because I know Justin has to go, right?
Yeah, why don't we just start with Justin so he can get his thing and get on for his show.
Man, I can't remember which of the things I didn't talk about. I watched a lot more stuff last week, so I will pick Preacher. I finished Preacher, and I really liked it. I think it is just continually. I have not seen Ash versus the Evil Dead, but I would assume that those two shows are kind of this like amazing new vanguard of taking the quality and the writing of peak television and applying them to a more irreverent, bloody, wacky kind of palette. And I'm very, very excited for it. I was pumped to get to the end of Preacher finally, and I'm excited for the third season. And the other thing that I watched the first episode of finally was Atlanta. I really, really, really dig that show. It is just kind of unlike anything else on television, and you never really know exactly where it's going to go, which is part of the fun.
Hey, guess what's back? Episode 1, Season 2 of Legion. And if you thought Legion was weird, then you're not prepared for how weird Season 2 is gonna be. It's like they made a dare to say, how could we subvert everything that was weird about the first season?
Sweet. Yeah, I love the way the first season ended. You're like, well, that was weird and strange.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
only gets weirder from here.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, you know how like a video game rewards you for getting through the first level by making the second level harder? Welcome to Legion.
Yeah. Well, I love first season. That was fantastic. My pick is anybody pick Isle of Dogs yet?
I
If
think
not,
we briefly talked about it. Probably not on this. I think it might have been in one of the after shows.
Yeah.
I loved it. I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. I thought that it was such a loving, wonderfully done film. I would say it feels a bit long, but there's not a scene that I would say, oh, this shouldn't be here or whatever, because I thought that everything was just great. It wasn't. You didn't feel like it was one of those really short stop motion films. You felt like you got a full movie. So.
What did you think about some of the daring moves he made? Now, I saw it bringing my children to go see it. So as a result, when twice he allows you for extended stretches to just believe that main characters have died, and then when he decides that oh yeah, we should watch the complete procedure of a kidney transplant.
Yeah.
Like those are some surprising moves for me that I enjoyed. Bonnie and some of the kids not so much.
You know, the challenge is that Wes Anderson, I don't think was trying to make a kids movie. I think he was trying to make a family movie, and I would say that his instincts skew more towards, if you like Life Aquatic, you're gonna love this kind of thing. And I think that's because I said if this was more of a kids movie, it would be a shorter, different sort of movie. And I hear what you're saying. I was watching this thinking, like, if I brought kids, one would just be weird because I don't have any kids. But if I did, if I brought kids, and I know that like I'm like, well, how would my nieces react to this? I'm like, I don't know if they'd be as into it as I am.
Yeah. Well, and I liked those daring moments, and I was grinning ear to ear, like, I can't believe this is really what he's going for. This is amazing.
Yeah.
But my kids, Penny's uncontrollable sobs from the front row of the theater filled the dead air. It was amazing.
Oh wow, you're a horrible father.
I rev my chainsaw arm and say, "Bug off, narrator."
Bryce, any picks?
You know what I saw a couple days ago? I saw A Quiet Place, which just opened this past week. It's very good. It's been interesting to see people write about their experiences, like on the MoviePass Reddit. It's like, oh man, people were talking and munching and crunching, and I didn't have that exact experience at the theater that I went to, but it was really fantastic, and it kind of fakes you out a little bit by
More.
Well, I'm just saying, like, in terms of tone, whether it's like super brutal or super hopeful, or it rides the line in a very good way that kind of keeps you guessing, and I think it's a pretty good story, and it's not too long. So
Awesome.
A
And
Quiet
that
Place.
was John Krasinski directed that.
Yeah,
That's one of the writers.
yeah, he worked on the screenplay and directed it, and he does a great job, and it's great. You should really go see A Quiet Place.
and a huge box office surprise.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It dethroned Ready Player One, much to our chagrin in the movie draft.
Yeah, I mean it dethroned it, and by a huge margin too. I mean it was just anyhow. So it's a quiet surprise. It's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it when it at least pre-release, it was 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I want to see what it looks like. It's 97% right now.
Wow.
That's great.
It's good.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Awesome, gentlemen. It's been a long time since I've done this with you. I've missed it. It's been weird. All right.
Held my breath the whole time.
Yeah.
All right, boys. I'll see you.
Bye, Justin.
Bye-bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
show.
All right, Brian, how are you on time?
I'm good.
We have time.
If we could keep it close to 25 or 30 minutes.
I'm going to use a
Yeah.
deep break.
Cool.
Yeah, BRB.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. Turn this on. There we go. Hi, guys. Yeah, Quiet Place was really good. Really, a really good show. Did I hit that show out? I did hit show out. Okay, great. Yeah, Quiet Place was really great. And then I went and I actually did see I Love Dogs this weekend, and that was also really good. I didn't really know what to expect going in, even though the guys talked about it on Spoiler in Time last week, I think. And when it's something that is like new or I haven't seen or whatever, I tend to be able to tune that stuff out pretty well. So I went in not really remembering or feeling spoiled on it. But it's really really good, really impressive. Surprising amount of animation in it, of not stop motion animation, which was also really good. It's a pretty good story. I haven't seen Legion yet. I will probably watch that between the shows here. I wasn't sure if that was this week or next week, but it was this week. And then Netflix just got season 3 of Better Call Saul. And so I've kind of been going back through that to sort of catch up, or just not catch up, but like refresh myself on it. Because if it hit Netflix, that means it came out a year ago. And it'll probably come back to AMC this fall, I guess. They still don't have a date, so I imagine if they weren't announcing it for summer, it would be a fall return. But yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with Legion, because all the marketing for it has been really intriguing. Bringing up a lot of questions. I almost feel like I should watch the finale episode again just to catch up, because this is the problem. It's tough to. I need a recap. Sure, Netflix does this really well. Of like, okay, there's a new season. You're gonna hit the button to start the new season. But first, we're going to just show you a recap of all the stuff that you obviously missed because it's been over a year since it was on. What else? Oh, that it just reminded me that I was watching season 2 of the Santa Clarita Diet on Netflix. The sort of not even really horror, but like zombie comedy show on Netflix. Hey, Andrew. Oh, can't hear you? Nothing. Okay. Give it a second.
I muted myself.
There you go.
I want to do a bit like when I come on have Justin and Brian and you guys start the show, and then like 4 minutes in be like, well, that's a great point, guys. Like, oh, finally, I'd muted myself for the past month.
Jeff says he started the Santa Clarita Diet and got bored 2 episodes in. I don't think it's for everybody. It's very goofy, and I don't know that what's her name? The lead actress in it is. I don't think she's everybody's taste.
Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore. Is it Drew Barrymore?
Yep. Drew
Yeah.
Barrymore and Raylan from the show
Timothy
Justified.
Olyphant.
Yeah, that too.
He's great. He's fantastic in it. But yeah, I recommend it. Season 2.
Man, did you have a subject you wanted to talk about on After Things? Because I think I've got a really good story that's happening right now, but it's in process, and I think it's too early for me to talk about.
My suggestion, if we didn't have anything, was we could talk a bit about. I just finished the 3rd Theo Cray book and talking about focus and how I had to develop some new focus techniques for myself to figure out how to get into it.
Dude,
and
yeah, I'd actually love to talk to you about that.
yeah, but if there's something else you want to talk about, or...
No,
You shouldn't talk about that until you do it. If it's the thing that I'm thinking of, Brian.
No. I don't think it is.
Okay.
I talked to
Brian,
that
I
guy.
think the face tattoo is totally worth talking about.
Oh, you did make that. Okay. Cool.
I made the call to the guy, and it was really positive. And
good.
what came out of it is, hey, let's work as a team to get you to a place. And like I think it's a good story, but it's just not finished yet.
Got it.
And so, in fact, he sent me a script today, and I'm really excited. Like we're working together on his thing. And so, anyway,
Interesting.
yeah.
It's the weirdest way I've ever heard somebody talk about their own intervention. But it's fine.
Yeah, no, but let's do we do Andrew's thing.
All right, cool. Yeah, my thing.
Stop.
And I got my rocket. I love it. I 3D printed this in my massive 3D printer.
I don't believe you. That sounds like something you wouldn't do.
Is that second stage or is that booster new? Because I think you showed us the rocket.
I think we saw the main rocket.
Okay. And they fit almost. You should have got them you should have modded them so like they link up. You could like put them in and they like.
This is crap.
Okay.
All right, ready. I would just so we can set expectations. I would love it if we could wrap up within 25
Sounds fantastic.
minutes. Okay,
Good.
great.
You're wasting time right now, Brian. Tell me when to wrap it up.
I'll shut up. You got it.
Okay. Take it away in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to After Things, where we talk about, I don't know, the things after we talk about weird things. This is actually a show for creatives and other people looking to sort of strike it out on their own or do something different. And it comes from our experience and questionable experiences. And we apologize for all the bad advice we may be giving. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood.
Hey, man, welcome back to the land of the living. You were kind of gone for a bit, which if anybody has any questions about what it takes to pull Andrew Main away from the Weird Things and After Things podcast, just trust that it would have to be a very interesting thing indeed for him to go away, and even more interesting for him to say nothing about it. Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say. And our producer, partner extraordinaire, Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be back on the After Things podcast.
Man, it's so weird. Like, I spend so much time in the Weird Things podcast, like making you a bad guy that I want to kill
on Journey
in
Quest?
our Journey Quest, and then I have to reset myself and say, no, he's a partner in this operation.
It could still be a bad guy.
That's fine.
I'm
That's
glad.
fine.
I'm glad to hear you're taking it so seriously. It's affecting your actual image of me. Actually, though, that kind of reminds me of a funny, really quick thing before we get into our main topic. Is we just shot that skit for the Scam
Which,
School page.
by the way, you did. Can I tell you a little bit about this?
Please.
We had which, by the way, I didn't know. I guess stabbings are a fad thing in the news of terrorism.
Yes.
Yeah, so-
England has been dealing with some pretty bad knife situations.
So that's unfortunate timing. but we've got a pen that has a hidden knife in it, which is actually super useful for opening boxes, and it's basically like a letter opener and so on. And so we wanted instead of normally what we do is we have me and David talk about like, hey, here's the thing, and it's really useful for this reasons and so on. And we thought it would be funny to just do a short little comedy sketch. And so it's a simple 3-beat comedy where Brian is a jerk boss. And he comes in and says something terrible to David. David looks like he's about to go psycho, opens the knife, and then uses it for something sensible, like opening a letter or opening a box or whatever. And then the third beat is, the quiet kid in the background turns out to be the psychopath.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Sorry, that 90-second spoiler.
But I was having a similar thing of like editing you being a deliberately like mean bad boss,
Right.
And then having to go through like this feedback process with you, and just
And then I felt like the mean boss when I'm like, no, make it better.
a little bit.
It came out
Yeah.
great. It came out great. If
Yeah.
you haven't seen it, take a look at. It was
Scam School
posted
channel.
on Friday on the Scam School channel.
Sounds cool. Can't wait to see that. And I'm sure it won't be controversial at all. Be perfect.
I think
It's actually performing really well.
Yeah, it's performed really
But I
really
think
well.
we've given it more juice than any other video lately. I feel like you've tweeted about it a lot.
Yeah. Well, and plus also there was the interesting thing of like it being popular, but also getting normally a Scam School episode gets between 3% and 5% thumbs down. And usually the thumbs down are either, I know this trick already, or yeah, I like that trick. Why are you explaining it to anyone? Mm-hmm. Whereas this one had like 10% thumbs downs. And I don't know if that's because this is an ad. Why are you giving me an ad? Or you're not very good at doing comedy. Or if they're saying there's been a rash of stabbings.
Probably all three. It's
Yes.
probably all three.
Yeah.
So-
Stabbings are bad. Let's just make it clear, everybody.
Please don't.
Well, and
Workplace
of course
violence
that's
is
the
bad.
whole joke. Like our bit is only funny if we all agree that stabbings are bad.
Yeah.
The pro stabbing lobby, just back off. So while I've been away and totally not a court-ordered prison sentence at a halfway house, totally not that at all.
Not
put
that at
rumor to
all.
bed. Okay.
Yeah, in fact, can we stop that hashtag, put him back, lock him back up?
Lock him back. Lock him back.
Lock him, hashtag lock him back. Wait, can we
It's
stop
no more
it?
of that. No,
Yeah, 'cause it
don't
was
chant
never
exactly
true.
like that anymore.
So life has been very hectic, and I've probably experienced what a normal person goes through, you know, because normally I try to keep my life as stress-free as possible, as avoid of any sort of complications as I can. But then all of a sudden I found myself dealing with a lot of stuff I had to handle all at once. And in particular, what I had to deal with, among everything else, was finishing a book. I had to finish the third Theo Cray novel.
So I'm going to do my best to keep everything in bounds here, but we've already established that whatever it is you're working on is important enough that it took you away for an entire month from Weird Things and After Things. And also it's important enough that you can't talk about it. I would imagine whatever that thing is, it's important enough that you would be tempted, were you able to just say, let's just push this third book. But my guess is you did not have that option and instead needed to lock everything up again.
Yeah, I mean, it's publishing can sometimes be flexible and stuff. And as an author, you can say, "Oh, it's just not coming. It's not working for me," or whatever. I never want to be that guy, And so I pride myself on delivering when I say I'm going to deliver, and getting things done and just finding the way to get things done. I was in a position with Looking Glass, the current Theo Cray book, which is out right now, number 2, which I had a ridiculously short amount of time to write that book. I had a really, really short amount of time to write that book. But I did what I could, made a very detailed outline, did everything I can. And I was super nervous when I finished that book because I wrote that book probably faster than the other novel I ever wrote. Bryce, why don't you go highlight there on the stars to see what the total rating is?
Apparently that was not a problem. Oh, look at that.
4.7 out of 5 with 249 reviews.
I'm tempted to not even say that there's 0% one-star reviews because that usually makes some jerk decide.
I'm sure
that
technically is when you have 249 reviews, there could be a couple reviews there. There's 0 stars. It's fine. But anyhow.
Still, that's so we've talked before, like what you don't want to be is a U-shaped curve on the ratings, because a U-shaped curve implies that your 5-star reviews are astroturfed and then actually it's a 1-star product or whatever. This is an extremely strong, like everything about this screams authentic, pleasing to the fans, well worth reading.
Yeah, and I think that, like anything, I think when it goes larger or a bigger audience, it will probably go down. When it first started, I was like, if I just get a 4, if I get an average of 4 out of 5, I'll be happy because it's a sequel. Sequels traditionally in series are hard. Sequels are often the ones that take the biggest hit because you're sitting there trying to figure out, what do people want? What do people want? And
when you look at The Naturalist, which had a lot of publicity, right, because of the Amazon first.
Yeah, nearly 5,000 reviews, and it's like a geometric progression starting at 2% 1-star and ending with 60% 5-star.
Yeah, it's a 4.3 out of 5, which I was thrilled with for a book that got
so much
presented to everybody.
Exposure.
This was shown to everybody. This sold well over 100,000 copies, and so I was very happy. I got a 4.3. I'm like, this is great. I would read a book I read anything with 3.5 or above. I'd feel no problem. I'll read it. I'd have to read through the reviews at 3 or whatever to see what's going on, and then to have Looking Glass do so phenomenally with the reviews so far, I'm taken aback and I'm amazed. So going into the third book, you're just like, you've got that pressure now too, because it's kind of like, I didn't know how the second one's going to do, and I don't know where I'm on the third one, and you're just sort of, and it's trying to go. I'm trying to tweak the formula even more.
This is interesting because this third book is the first place where the success or lack thereof of books 1 and 2 affect the way the story of the third one is told. This is, and I guess for the first time I'm realizing this is probably true for all authors, where it's the third book or so where the feedback loop, where the story becomes, I don't want to say self-referential, but affected by the outside success of it.
I would say most it's the second. The reason is that most authors, like, they don't have as much time between them as I have a less amount of time rather than between these books. Because remember, Naturalist came out in November, Looking Glass came out in March.
Right.
So that was a 4-month
Well, and you pretty much had it, it was presented at the time as pretty much like a 2-book deal, right?
Yeah, I did a 2-book with them, and then now I've done another 2-book deal with them. Yeah, and that's announced. So anyhow, but yeah, and so that was the thing. So yeah, that was the thing. And again, as an author, you look at other authors, their second books. Like I've been very lucky that my second books in my series have actually had better critical receptions than the first ones. Like that was Name of the Devil was nominated for the Thriller Award, and then with Blackfall, which is now up for the Edgar Award, that was phenomenal to have that happen. And my point with these things isn't just like, well, look at me, and is it? You don't know. You just follow a plan. You stick to the plan, and you hope the plan works, and you get to the end of the book, and then if it works out, it's great. And I talk about this all the time. Like, I don't know if I like my thing.
And for the record, just I don't think anybody begrudges. I would hope that the folks who listen to After Things don't begrudge any of us telling the truth about something that turns out to be successful, because we're so good about talking about the things that are unsuccessful. None of us claim like we know what we're doing or that we're great. You know, our goal is to tell the truth of what it's like to be playing this ridiculous game and tell the highs and the lows of it as best we can so that you guys can play too.
Yeah, I'll talk about, so writing Murder Theory was a struggle because all these other things pulling my time away, which I've always been sympathetic towards authors with families and other commitments and stuff. I always understand that. And when I talk about, writing a book in a week, that's assuming you have no other obligation, that you're not trying to deal with a huge project and other things, and people calling you multiple times a day saying, get on the phone, having to talk between 2 lawyers about stuff or whatever. That's assuming that you can just have a week in isolation. You can do that. You can do amazing things. But even then, it can be problematic trying to focus. I started making a checklist because I said, if I have 2 hours to write, I got to make that 2 hours work. And number one is you got to know what you're going to do. You got to know when you sit down to write. Like, if I got to write a chapter, I've got to have the conflict of the chapter. I got to know how it starts and how it ends. I can do that anywhere. I can stand in line and think about that while I multitask or do something else because I'm not writing a lot. I can spend a half an hour thinking of 3 sentences that let me know what it is. If I have that, the ingredients list or the recipe, so to speak, of this is what's going to be, that I'm set. Every time I've struggled, it's because I did not have that. I sat down there trying to solve those problems at the keyboard, and that's the worst time to do it, in my opinion. You can settle on the keyboard if you're writing an outline. Solve that problem before you're trying to figure out how you're going to show it. So doing that, number one, was super helpful. Then I came up with my steps to get into the zone. How do I get into the zone for writing? And I kept
ritual?
track of what's that?
Like a ritual, like a pre-writing ritual or something?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it. I mean, a ritual is you could describe it as a ritual, but it was literally like, what do I need? And I said, okay, one is I gotta distract myself from everything around me. I put in my headphones and I start listening to a soundtrack. So I'm less paying attention to external stimuli. Now I'm just back inside of my head and what I'm doing. Clearly off Twitter, clearly off of that. And so now all of a sudden I'm back into my own low, because like I focus the most when I get a massage. And so I just because you're just detached from everything else. I put myself into that mode using my headphones, and all of a sudden I'm in Andrew's space. Then I'll say if I need to write in 15, 20 minutes, they used to say like, put on your gym shorts, Like if you put on your gym shorts, you're going to be in the mood to go to the gym. You're halfway there.
Right. Basically, just adopt the trappings of whatever success looks like, and then you feel the need to complete the picture.
And I've adopted another one, which was because I notice if I want to work out in 20 minutes, half hour, I'll eat a piece of fruit and then put on my gym clothes, because my energy will start to spike.
The sugar
and
from
then
the fruit, yeah.
It's very easy. And so what I do with the same thing. So what I would do is, like, if I'm feeling low energy, start listening to music. Okay, then have like a fruit smoothie. And I notice about 20 minutes, my energy goes, I'm in the mode, I'm super alert, and I'm ready to write, and then I could just keep going. So that was the 3 factors: was know what I need to do, separate myself from, put myself in my own space, then 3, give myself the right amount of energy I need to go do it.
So I have a really, really hard time entering, and tell me if I'm representing this correctly. Like, have we talked much about flow state on After Things?
A little
before?
bit, yeah. A little bit.
As we've talked about on Weird Things, for all I know, tomorrow they'll tell me flow state is not a real thing. But subjectively, flow state's a very real thing. for me.
That's what I'm trying to attain. That's very much what I'm trying to get into.
And it seems like for me to summon that beast requires a certain amount of pressure. There needs to be a terror of the deadline. And lately, I've wondered if, for the last couple of years, I haven't been suffering from from an embarrassment of flexibility. And I wonder if, for example, Penn Jillette has talked about how from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to bed, every single moment is scheduled. And he's like, well, I got 15 minutes to meet this person, and now I'm on to the next thing or whatever. There's part of me that thinks like, man, if I could just afford a personal assistant to hold me to task, to force me from moment to moment to moment to moment, if that wouldn't be a good thing. But absent that, because I can't afford that and I can't be that person, what structures can I lean on to cause me to stand up and make stuff happen? And I think that for the past 20 years, up until like 3 or 4 years ago when I stopped touring as much as I did, all of that was baked in. I lived in 4-hour increments. It's 5 a.m. I'm awake. That means it's time to go to the airport. It's 8 a.m. We're taking off. We're landing. My job is to have a sleep on this plane. It's now 2 in the afternoon. I've landed. My job is to make it to the hotel. It's 5 in the afternoon. That means it's time for me to take a shower, get ready for the gig. It's 7 in the evening. My job is to be setting up the show. It's 8. It's time for the show. It's 11 o'clock. Oh, it must be time for me to have dinner with the folks afterwards. It's midnight. My job is to go back to sleep. That was such a powerful, almost narcotic. That freedom of knowing at any given moment there's nothing else on this planet that you're meant to be doing except for what you're doing is so delightful. Mm-hmm. Compare that to the challenges that I deal with now is like, well, it's morning. It's time to take the kid to school. It's the rest of the day. And here's a gigantic amorphous list of things that I know that I ought to do, and none of them do I have to do. And there's part of me that deeply, deeply craves that power of being up against a deadline where it's do or die. Whatever you do, this is what's going on the record. Just do the best you can and go.
I would say that, and there's a reason why people sometimes don't want to leave military life or prison or other sorts of regimented sort of lifestyles, and they suffer when they're out of it. But I would say that my most productive periods were when I had no external schedules. I was dealing all with internal ones. But it came from me deciding, and that carries over now, where I go, for this week, this is what I have to do. Or for these 3 hours, this is the most important thing for me. And it killed me not to be doing weird things, because that was always Monday. That was the most important thing. But then when I had project stuff and writing stuff that I said, I am overwhelmed with this stuff, weird things will function without me if Brian and Justin do it. And when we have this agreement, whatever, somebody needs to go do something, whatever, we'll manage the slack. And you guys have been there for me, great, which I appreciate. So I'm like, okay, now the most important thing is blank. And I have, and it kind of comes down to, I don't do overlapping things. If I say I need to do X, like I'll try to break my stuff into this day is this project, this day is that project. If I'm done with that thing at the end of the day, then I can start on the other thing. I break my time down like that. But like I had to get this, I actually had to write 2 books this year. I wrote another book, which was a spec book. And then I wrote another book, this book, in the middle of this other stuff. And it was crazy trying to write 2 books in 3 months.
For the uninitiated, a spec book means a book you're writing on speculation. Like basically, I'm going to write this book, and hopefully you like it, and it goes somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's a book that like, oh, I think, discuss with my agent. I'm like, I think this is a really promising thing. And then, she mentioned it to some people, and they got super excited about it. And she was excited, and they were super excited about it. I'm like, okay, let me do this thing. And then I did this thing, and then, I did that, and then that. And then on top of some other stuff relating to this project. It was just, I had a lot of things, but I would say, for that, I'd say I'd give myself X amount of time from point A to point B to go do this and do this. The problem I had was trying to figure out, like, this has been very helpful for me learning how to schedule and how much stuff I can take on and what I can't. That was the other part, was to realize it. Like, I will tell you, the thing I'm about to go do is the most stressful. You'd think it would be the most stressful thing in the world, but once I finished that book, my stress level dropped tremendously. Like,
And that's a case where it's like the dance floor is cleared. You only have eyes for one project, and it's just the two of you doing all your stuff.
yeah, all my stress now is stuff relating to that. Like, there's a certain amount of training and other stuff going into it, and these other things. A lot of moving parts to it, but it's the payoff is great. But yeah, not having to worry about the book obligation now is super helpful. But anyhow, I would say that I did a book party a couple weeks ago. I was in New York, and a woman had asked me oh, what's your what kind of writing space should I have, or should I have? And I'm like, well, I have my environment that I prefer to write in, but you've got to get that out of your head. You got to get out of your head that you need this special place to write in, because you're going to find out that if you want to be a high productivity writer, or you just get things done, you got to write anywhere, anytime you can. And I try to confine my writing to here and sort of this environment, just so it doesn't overflow into my life too much. But when it needs to, I let it go elsewhere. And that's when I use headphones to focus. I've learned to write on my phone and do all these other things. But having that deadline, having that time frame is certainly, I understand the value of it, but you can inflict that on yourself.
Well, to a point, but it's tough because
like, is there anything stopping you from saying, okay, so I have these dead set things that I have to do. I have the gym, I have the kids, I got this, that, or the other thing, and then just saying, hey, I'm picking literally any time on the calendar, and I'm making it a weekly thing. This is my Twitter time. This is my Gmail time.
I think in my heart of hearts, I just know that it. So this is what I'm wrestling with: is there's what's urgent and what's important, and what's urgent has a natural time barrier in it. It's like, hey man, you got to get this, either is handled now or never. Whereas what's important is obviously more important, but it very often does not have that barrier. And as a result, like I look at email is one of those things where there's so much there. And we've talked about this before. I get between, 100 to 300 emails a day. And a lot of them I can either ignore. As I go through, I can either ignore them, I can respond with 1 or 2 lines, and then there's that frustrating third category of like, this is important and merits a deeper look. And as a result, it just gets stuck there for, up to a month, 2 months, 3 months. And then it's as I work my way back, at this point right now, I'm at just under 2,000, quote, important and unread emails. And when I do really well, when I hit those periods of flow state where it's like, the stars align, I'm just listening to techno music or whatever, and I'm just plowing through emails, and I get all the way back. I'm traveling back in time. Like now I'm back to February. Now I'm caught up back to January. Now I'm back to December. And then there's this strange clarity that comes when you get on the other side of it, where you're like, now I'm back to July of last year, where I write and I actually copy and paste the phrase, finally clearing out the inbox, comma, just got to this, ... And then, and I just paste that at the beginning of all these. And half of those things I end up saying, whatever became of this project? Or how did that work out? Or who did you get for this gig since I never responded to you? And it's astonishing how in some ways, and I hesitate to admit this, in some ways, there's a clarity that comes from delaying responding to everything. And so much of what was in your inbox does not matter. And you can only see that 6 months in the future.
It is very easy to reach out and send an email to somebody. And so I try to handle email with the same expectation of which I send it. If I'm sending something, a query or something to somebody who I know is a very busy person, and whose primary job is not communications, like if I send it to a company as a PR head or something at a company, like, yeah, you need to respond. That's your job. But if I'm sending it to another author or something like that, I don't expect a response. And I make my email sort of self-contained or whatever, and also like, if you have the time, respond. If not, and I try to make that way. And that's my reaction, is that I'm not like, well, so-and-so is such a big shot. They didn't respond to me. I'm never like that, because, it's.
Well, it indicates more about your unfair projections on a person you've never met or had business dealings with than it does about their poor communication skills.
Yeah, I get emails from people who, are, very sincere, but like, hey, I'd like to work with you or do this, that, and they're very long, and it's like, maybe there's something to talk about, but I just don't have the time to really talk about this at this time. And their world is not, they're not getting the hundreds of emails a day you and I get, and it's hard for them to understand.
This is a linked tangent. I hopefully this will be a short trip, but what I want is your absolution on this. You know that I don't like to block or mute people on Twitter. You know that, all things being equal, one of the reasons that I love to respond to YouTube comments and on Twitter is because I can make good. I get that endorphin rush of like, I'm responding to you, and that's done, and that's done, and that's done. Mm-hmm. In this case, I had somebody who, I follow a lot of people, especially hopefully people who are likely to have been fans of mine. And I got direct messages from a guy who was like, hey, I really, really like your stuff. I have questions for you. How do I get started in Magic? And so I responded through DMs of like, have you seen this exchange between me and Teller? And then the dude was like, or he's like, no, I haven't. Will you sum it up for me? And I'm like, bro, I just sent you a link. If you're not going to read the link, I don't know that there's much for us to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then it was, well, that's the thing is like, as a policy, I don't just click on any links. And I was like, okay, well, hey, friendship is based on trust. So when you want to be friends, just trust me. And he's like, well, I don't know about that. And then, and it became this like descending into, and I just responded like, hey, let me say it again. When you want to be friends, and I do want to be friends, trust me. You extend trust and we'll be there.
I feel like that's putting a lot. There was a thing probably about a year ago for one of these shows, and I was really unsure about whether to work it into one of the shows, one of the podcasts specifically.
Right.
And I was kind of wrestling with it. And when I told you and another person on that show about it, what you told me was you have thought way too much about it, so clearly you should not do it.
Exactly, and that's what happened
that's
again.
Why you should have stopped responding to him.
And you'll be proud of me because it took me a couple of revisions longer, but eventually I basically I responded again like, hey man, whenever, and then he responded like, all of a sudden I realized this person is getting what he wants. What he wants is to feel important by taking my time. And the moment I realized that, and I don't do this lightly, I full on blocked him because I realized like that is an unfair allocation. That is not fair to my children. That's not fair to my team. That's not fair to me and myself to be dedicating this to a back and forth Twitter argument for somebody who, over the dumbest crap. The dude didn't want to click on a link that led to the Teller letter. Sure. Like that's what I tried to get him to read.
What made you block him in lieu of just like stop ignoring it?
Because I realized that I wanted the door to be all the way closed. It was the only way to be respectful to the rest of my time. And this person, and I decided in the future, if I'm ever called out about this, what will I say? And I was like, I will say this was occupying an unreasonable and unfair amount of my mental bandwidth, and it was not appropriate for my family or my team to maintain this, any kind of whatever this was, because he was being snide, but he wasn't being hostile or anything.
But I guess like, is it that you couldn't trust yourself to not respond to it?
Correct. I needed to not even be able to hear whatever he had to say next, because I knew that future Brian, whatever it was, I'd be tempted to dedicate 3 whole minutes to crafting a response, and this MFR did not deserve. It was an unreasonable ask of in that regard.
I think you need something new, man. Like only because I see that you let people get under your skin and engage with them probably more than is healthy, and I don't know, man. It's tough. I'm going to offer my suggestion.
Yeah. And Brian, I'll say you're a far better man than I am because you engaged with this guy far longer than I would.
And keep in mind, all of it comes from a place of ego on my regard. I am just constantly tempted to believe, well, I'm just better than everyone else. I could be friendly with everyone or whatever.
I look at it this way. Like, I've had people like email about my books all the time, and it's great. Usually it's like, hey, I love your book, whatever. I'm like, great. And sometimes like, oh, well, I disagree with this. I'm like, oh, this was my choice. Why I did this. That's the end of it. I might get back like da 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 da. It's like I responded to that. I gave you my thought in a response. I don't have time. If I have a discussion about this with everybody who wants to have that discussion, I would never get another book done again. I try to respond to everybody who emails me about my book. I try to respond to everybody. Thanks. 99% of people are amazingly fantastic. I go, oh, thanks. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it. They don't follow up because they know from the brevity of the response, my time is short, and then they don't push it. They don't push it, which is great. And I recognize names coming in again, and I wish I had more time to read them. And it makes me feel good to know that, oh, this person gave me a compliment, and I was able to thank them for that. And we're all good. We're all good. They know I want to write, and I know they want to read, and they want it. And sometimes I've had people like, hey, what up this? I'll give them a little more thoughtful response. And then I had somebody like, oh, you ignored the such and such person here. And I'm like, who did this? I'm like, well, actually, this is what happened, blah, 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 with this, this actual historical person. But they're very interesting, blah, blah, blah. And then they get this response like, yeah. But you get the people like, yeah, but they want to have that. Because sometimes I get people who want to correct me. Sometimes I'm wrong. But sometimes it's like, no, that's not quite. I'll go like, well, this is this thing. And they want to do the yeah, but. I'm like, well, let them have it. Leave it. Let them have the last word. Just leave it there. And, and sometimes it can drive people nuts. I had a thing where I was standing outside with a friend, and I'm watching this guy back up his car, and he's trying to clear this red zone. He's like 3 feet away. He's not asked to worry up the red zone, and he's heading pretty fast towards this other car. I'm like, dude, whoa, stop. And he comes like this close to the bumper. I'm like, dude, stop. And I'm looking in, and he won't even look at me and go like this or whatever. He just ignores me. And then he gets out. And I'm like, dude, I was trying to yell at you. I just didn't want you to hurt your car, right? He goes, I got it. I'm like, I look over at his car and where the bumper is to the other car. I go, clearly. And he goes, what's that supposed to mean? I said, nothing. Well, no, what was that supposed to mean? Nothing. So I said, I got it. I'm like, okay. He says, why are you still talking? I'm like, I'm done talking. It was like he wanted to have a thing, and he has to go over to his trunk, and he can barely get his hand in to unlock the trunk because
he's parked so close to it. Yeah,
but all of a sudden, I'm trying to be nice, but now all of a sudden, I'm being aggressive now because I'm like, and I did clearly because it was just like, and so it's like I went from being, hey, I want to be a helpful guy to like he was a jerk to me, so all of a sudden now I'm being antagonistic towards him.
But it's tough too because there are moments where doing something like a clearly moment is more effective than taking up all the words. Like we talked on this, I believe on this show, when I had to call out one of my neighbors for shooting of an air rifle at my $2,000 drone. Mm-hmm. It's like the clearest way to communicate instantly in 5 syllables or less was to call him an a-hole and tell him to knock it off or I was calling the cops,
Yeah, this was a situation where my problem was like I went from wanting to be a helpful person to a person who wanted to be right and put him in his place. And that was the problem, is that I went from here to all of a sudden, oh, no, you're an idiot. I'm going to tell you why. And that's like, that was my mistake. What was my goal here? My goal is not to have this guy hurt his car. And then he was, who knows what was going on, but he was so upset with me, or he was embarrassed and whatever by the fact. And then he didn't want to have, and it was just, but then it's like, I should have handled it better because, I went from, I'm just looking out for you to like, oh, well, F you. I'm going to make fun of you now because, you're an idiot and I'm going to point out at you. And that's and that happens online all the time is sometimes people get argument and then I have to stop and say this person, they use this many typos to tell me they spotted a typo in my tweet. No,
it's tough though. It's tough though because I know for me, like I just want to believe I could be all things to all people, and of course that's factually not the case.
Yeah, no one can.
But it's what I lack, and maybe what I need, is a clear delineation of who is and is not worthy of my time, and unfortunately, and that's not a value judgment on the people who are saying these things.
It's easy. Are they polite?
I mean,
are they? You know enough now to tell
this guy. See, unfortunately, that's not a great example because this guy on Twitter was polite the whole time, but he was just wordy.
He was using polite language. But that's the difference. There's a difference between being polite and using polite language. He was using polite language.
Yeah.
but he told you he doesn't trust you. He said, I don't trust you. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, at that point, it should have been just like you already did the thing that you were going to do and continued to do, which was just saying,
Well,
here's the link that I'm going to give you, and I'm not going to do anything else. And you kind of just like, that kept being your position.
Right, but
And he kept trying to break through that.
Just imagine his response was perfectly worded in such a way where he's just like, well, as a matter of policy, surely you can understand that I don't have a policy of clicking on any link that comes through to me. If only I could,
Good for him.
But again, I look at polite's not just a matter of language, it's a matter of, I'm asking this other thing for you. I was ungrateful for this other thing.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to ask you for this other thing. And to me, it's like, it's math. I'm like, forget the language. Where is this transaction going? I want a thing. Here's the thing. That thing's not good enough for me.
Right.
It's the sort of thing where, like, if my reaction would be, well, good for you, or that's your problem, or whatever, then that's where I'm going to leave
Correct.
it.
But then you get 4 paragraphs back from him, and it's
Yeah,
like, do you choose to not even read those paragraphs?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
You guys
I
are
have-
better
I
people
don't-
than me. I need to not
don't-
even see them to
I don't
be able to
I don't
deal.
do direct message on Twitter because I can't handle it. So I never did Facebook Messenger. I use
Yeah.
email.
I'm surprised
And
you
if I'm
read
on Twitter
DMs at
talking
all,
to people, I try to keep all my conversations public too on Twitter because it just doesn't get weird. And also it makes me mindful of not being this. Yeah, it's. I would say, Brian, you have to figure out. To me, it's ultimately my bandwidth. How much time do I want to spend on any one of those transactions?
Yeah, fair enough.
Have you?
Any picks? Or sorry,
Okay,
Bryce,
yeah.
you have a comment?
Because I've been thinking about a very similar thing a lot lately, and I feel like I'm 24 hours at any given moment away from like turning off all of my push notifications into like manual fetch, so that
So you could legitimately not have to hear all of these things begging for your attention.
well, it's not. I certainly don't get the volume that you guys do, but at the end of the day, that means anybody on Twitter gets to be on my phone at 24/7, and immediately, and it's like a lot of times that's great because that means replies and friends and whatever, but that it can also just mean that someone can do whatever
they can
at any
occupy
time.
unearned real estate in your mind.
Yeah.
Which is a legitimate concern because, like, how much is the real estate in your mind worth? And as you certainly, I'd imagine Andrew's ahead of both you and me put together in this regard, where it's just like, man, especially given this project you're working on, you simply would be doing a disservice to the interests that are supporting you to dedicate, even 30 seconds, a minute to some rando on the street.
When I learned that when I write, and I just sort of I got comfortable using, hey, I'm writing, I can't respond or whatever, and I do, and people who get rude or angry with me not responding, it's like, I don't want to. You're not a person that this is going to be a productive conversation or relationship with. It's like, this is not. There's no future in this because this is how you're starting. So. And people and then I try to make up for it. Like, you make yourself very available, online, and I try to make myself available when I do live streams.
Can I tell you the idea that I have? And I'm getting ready to. It's a month or 2 months away from doing kind of a what I'm hoping will be a reboot of my schedule. And one of the things I'm thinking about doing is building into publicly making office hours available, where it's like, these are my office hours. Let's say it's Tuesday, Thursday, blank to blank, whatever. My Skype will be open. I'll respond to all messages. I'll do whatever. But
I would say you don't need to open yourself up in ways that you aren't already, though.
But the only way to do this is to shut down the rest of the time. Just say,
Go
from now
for
on,
it. Yeah.
from now on, you have zero expectation of my time except for office hours, during which I will show up and I will do whatever I can as long as I can, and then those hours are closed and we're done.
That's what Periscope is for me. It's not a schedule, but my hardcore fans know that if I'm not on Periscope, they know I'm writing, whatever. And I get, come back, whatever. And I come in there and do it, and I'll do as many as I can when I can. And then I'm like, and people know, like, I'm so transparent and open when I do those and free flowing. I think that balances out that I'm very hard to get to at other times. And you look at I idolize Elon Musk because, and you could use, we could take a really famous person and then divide the number of Twitter followers you have by the number of times they reply. That's what you're obligated to do, you know? And so you look like, that's what it is. And so when he will be on Instagram and he'll be there for a little, he'll be responding to some stuff, but we don't want to waste his time. Like, when he's on Twitter, he does engage with people a bit, and then he goes and does his thing. He gets thousands of people asking him questions, and some people get irate, like, why don't you do this? You should owe me. And it's like, he knows, no, I don't. I don't owe you anything. And if I gave everybody who wanted my time, there would be no time to make cars. Unless if you gave everybody the time that they wanted, there'd be no time to make podcasts and do this and spend it with your family.
Like, it's no one person's job to make other people act better or to validate X, Y, or Z response.
Yep. I've got to bail, speaking of time, because
Ah.
I had a time commitment. Do we have any picks?
You know what? I think I mentioned it before, but I'm really stuck on all the extras from the Thor Ragnarok extended cut thing on Amazon. I really enjoyed. Did you happen to see that? It was directed by Taika Waititi. The little reality show of where not the collector, the other one, the Grandmaster ended up.
I think I watched that.
Yeah,
I think I watched that.
He ends up as the roommate of the guy who used to be Thor's roommate, Daryl.
Yeah, whatever.
Daryl, yeah.
Daryl, yeah.
It's great.
That's
it's
cool.
great. All of that is great.
And so that's just a digital extra?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I've been playing a game lately. I could spend an hour talking about this, but I will keep it very short because Andrew's got to go. It's a sequel. It's the second sequel. It's the third in a series called Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony. It is a surreal horror murder mystery game where it's basically if like Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, was a horror game. It follows.
So it's all about figuring out who the bad guy is from a cast of characters that all might look equally innocent.
Yeah, so like there are 16 students, and they're all at least in some way related to like the idea of like ultimate students.
Mm-hmm.
So like you might have, this is the ultimate Aikido student. This is the ultimate astronaut. This is the ultimate baseball player. And it creates this weird, interesting thing for murder mysteries where you're creating characters who have, at least in the universe, a justifiable reason to be extremely expertised at one thing. And by the short story is that they're kidnapped and they're forced to kill someone if they want to leave. And that creates very quick, like emotional breakdowns and mental breakdowns and interesting motives. So I recommend that whole series. It's on PC now. Danganronpa.
Awesome.
My pick is Astoria. It's about John Jacob Astor's goal to create a trading empire based on the West Coast. Takes place in around 1810, 1812, 1813. That period, he and Thomas Jefferson had a conversation about the idea of creating another democracy. This one, based in, trying to capitalize on the seal fur trade, which actually was a huge global trade. And then had this succeeded, there could have been one country on the West and one in the East. And he was already an extremely wealthy man, could have been probably the wealthiest person in the world. It's a story of the ship they sent around the Cape Horn to go there, and then an overland expedition, because this is just like 2 years after Lewis and Clark went across America. And so it's an amazing story about what life was like then, what the story of expeditions, economics, all that. I've been listening on got 2 hours left. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I thought it was a really, really great book. So a story. And it's really, you start thinking about this in the context of colonizing Mars and how economics work like that. So highly recommend Astoria. So,
Nice.
Gentlemen, it's good to be back.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Andrew.
Bye.
Good work today. And that'll do it for us for this stream. We'll be back in about 2 hours for Cord Killers.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We'll see you then. Bye.